extremely strong flavor, and just one of these beans can make 100 liters of chocolate, and the protagonist, after tasting it, is left with a horrible taste in his mouth. Then the butler, watching him, says he can't believe he's eating pure, bitter beans, thinking that he must really like strong chocolate. Then he looked at Vikir, saying that he is following the clan leader's order to only take what he can carry. So, he figured out a way to eat all the chocolate he can within those limits, thinking that the boy is very clever, and the chef speaks to the protagonist, asking if he wants them taken to his room after they're processed. But Vikir says he doesn't need them processed, he'll take them as they are. Even so, the butler doesn't understand anything, asking if Vikir suddenly developed such a strong personality, but he's told that Vikir didn't want the chocolate to eat, but rather for the purpose of these beans. Robert would be revealed soon, specifically on the day of the practical exam in 5 days. So, in the middle of the forest, he wears the smile of someone who knows everything will work out. He says that on that day, a huge incident, never seen before, would happen in the Baskerville clan, and Vikir says that her clan was known as the clan of berserkers throughout the world, and the children born there had to go through a difficult program of education. They had to climb mountains for resistance training soon after learning to walk, and rest was not permitted outside of designated times. And when it was time, it's too much, it's Prota himself. Looking at him, completely terrified, he orders them to take the children to the Cradle of Swords, and the man next to him simply agrees, while Prota is scared to death. To sleep, they had to sleep next to the corpse of a demonic creature, or next to a baby demonic creature, so that they would be able to adapt to the terrifying environment. And as soon as this, when the training period ended and they turned 8 years old, the young hounds faced extremely gruesome and difficult evaluations, and that's why the Baskerville clan began to be called the Clan of the Berserker, and the practical assessment now is the survival test. So, the young hounds gathered at Mount Ru, a mountain infested with demonic creatures that were captured at the borders of the territory. And so Instructor Pavlov goes to them, saying that what must be done in this practical assessment is simple. They must survive there for a month and hunt strong demonic creatures. They just need to keep these two things in mind. They will be rewarded with 10 points if they manage to save someone's life, and 30 points if they save someone's life without suffering serious injuries. They receive 50 points for surviving by eliminating another young master, 70 points for hunting demonic creatures and surviving, and 90 points if all the aforementioned conditions are met beforehand. In addition, each of them received a brooch. Stealing brooches from others will result in bonus points, but dying will reset your score to 0, eliminating any chance of reaching 100 points. He expects everyone to keep the teachings in mind, and that lowering your guard will result in immediate death. He advises them not to leave the restricted area, as La Road Mountain has many dangerous, unexplored areas. He recommends that they remain within the area containing the demonic creatures that they themselves subdued. The knights, guardians, will secretly score them throughout the testing period. Then, they stare at Vikir as the instructor speaks, wondering if that isn't the guy who was submerged in the... Seeing the main culprit behind his framing and execution, Hugo Le Baskerville. Hugo appears to be much younger, and he says that now he's sure he sees that he's returned to when he was just a child. Restige for 7 minutes, and they comment that there are also rumors that he killed 2 poisonous snakes while he was still in his crib. They heard that he also achieved a perfect score on the written assessment. They want to see if he can also perform well in the practical assessment. And Prota thinks about Mount Rud, mentioning that it has been a while since he last visited. So, those 3 remain close to Prota, but they can't even bring themselves to look at him. And then Pavlov announces that the bell will signal the start of the evaluation. So, he prays that they succeed in ringing the bell and making everyone vanish from that place. And one of them says that he needs to guarantee a favorable position first, and he heads to the spot he found during last year's exam, stating that there are no rules, saying that they have to survive on their own. They just need to follow him and steal his points. As the 3 twins begin to move together, the oldest orders them to secure that area first, but the middle one tells him not to give him orders, and the youngest says he's going alone, telling him to focus on himself. And Pavlov questions whether it has already begun, commenting that the evaluation has not. It encourages killing others, and while it's not prohibited, it's also not actively encouraged. And since points are deducted for specific types of kills, everyone tries their best to kill each other with their own hands. And he thinks that the Guardian Knights, who are observing the situation, will likely ensure that deaths are kept to a minimum. Then, one of them, looking at OTA, mentions that the area is close to an unexplored area, and questions how far he intends to go. Then, he remarks that OTA is a genius who has shown excellent skills since childhood, and is eager to see what the boy will show. But at that moment, the protagonist approaches a red tree, wondering if that was the right way, and he notes that the ground should be soft enough, saying that now that he's decided where he will, child. And that was the life he had before he became a hunting dog. And because he was born as an illegitimate son of the family, he didn't receive the best upbringing, and hunting dogs need stay for the time being. It's time to enjoy his vacation. Then, the man who had been following him questions him about this vacation, and the protagonist simply gathers some wood while the others, they are fighting, and he's off doing completely random things while everyone else is struggling to survive. He builds a hut and takes shelter inside, just staying, lying down peacefully. And the man who had been spying on him becomes completely despondent because all he has been doing is sleeping and digging holes for several days. Furthermore, he only hunts for side food and gathers firewood, wondering if the boy is just planning to hide out there and pass the time, and if the rumors of him being a genius were false. So, he figures there probably aren't any reasons to keep watching him since he's just going to hide. As soon as he leaves, the protagonist is happy that he's finally gone, thinking that camping is a little nostalgic. He remembers his past life while camping with one of his men. He talks to the leader, mentioning that cocoa beans are the best thing for removing the smell from meat, especially dog meat, bloody and highly concentrated. The protagonist does this by throwing the cocoa into the fire, attracting the scent. He states that the obstacle is gone and his preparations are complete, so it's time to begin the hunt, as he has set up several traps in the area. Then, a few days later, the protagonist is walking through the unexplored area. He mentions that beyond this point is an area that he's been explored yet. However, these parts are basically his backyard from when he was a scout. He detects a strong, lingering smell, dead and burnt roots. He is certain that the creature's habitat is nearby, until he hears a noise and notices burnt excrement. Only one creature creates such excrement, and then that creature arrives. To learn to be faithful to their obligations, assassinations, espionage, ambushes, and various other things. He had to deal with all sorts of terrible acts, all so that the Baskervilles behind him, and he says he grew tired of them during his scouting days, but seeing one now is quite satisfying. Here, he sees the hellhound face to face with the protagonist, and the dog starts barking at him and growling at the boy. And that dog has a B+ danger rank. He mentions the demonic creatures that consumed the hellish eyes of hellfire, the hellhounds, and in his past life, he was only able to face one of these when he was 18 years old. So of course, a direct battle would be too much for his current 8-year-old body. However, he knows a method that would allow even a child to defeat a hellhound. So, he goes up to it and talks about their first weakness, going under the creature. He explains that the hellhound can only move in a straight line, and has difficulty following curvilinear movements. The demon understands very well what the boy is saying, and he talks about the second weakness of a hellhound, because, for some reason, demonic creatures cannot pass through water, even in small quantities, and in this situation, the slowed-down hellhound will approach, exposing the fatal weakness of the monsters from the Tau, dog type. Then, it attacks the protagonist. He's commenting on how they open their mouths while running. Then, the boy throws something directly into its mouth while dodging the creature's attack, and the monster, who just swallowed what he threw, looks at the protagonist, but ends up feeling it fall onto the hard ground. And the protagonist says that chocolate is poison for dog-type monsters, and a bloody grain, capable of generating 100 liters of chocolate, has absurd effects on them, and it seems that even a hellhound can't defeat mere chocolate, and the most affected areas must have been its stomach and head. But he is protected by his golden back, and the place he needs to target is a spot that has been weakened and isn't protected by the ribs, and that's the kidneys. And so, he thrusts the sword there, could be the best among the 7 great families, and the reason for his loyalty was simple. He just wanted to receive recognition from Hugo of the family, and the gates of the demonic world, making the monster groan on the floor as he finishes it off, and with that, the monster's fire goes out. And Vicky says that killing a demonic creature gives your body experience or karma, which strengthens his body. He remarks that the sword feels even lighter afterward, and that, at this rate, he'll be able to regain the strength he possessed before adulthood. He's imagining Hugo's expression upon discovering that an 8-year-old child hunted a demonic creature with a B+ danger level. He believes that this should guarantee him first place in the practical exam. He's already decided on the reward he'll request, something he could only dream of in his previous life. He intends to monopolize an item whose true value is unknown to anyone in this era. At that moment, he begins to wonder if he should sever the creature's head, but then another monster appears nearby, and looking behind him, he's startled by several dogs appearing, realizing that they were apparently drawn by the other dogs' screams. He wonders if they intend to avenge their little friend, commenting that it would be a touching gesture, but, so, he cuts off that thing's head and says he didn't want to hunt just one, telling them to go away since he still has plenty of grain. But just then, something appears, scaring those dogs. The protagonist senses this, but wonders if they are becoming afraid of the murderous intent emanating from a mere 8-year-old child, thinking that normally hellhounds would rather die than submit to prey unless something else has arrived. And he looks back, seeing a Cerberus. A Cerberus is a demonic creature with a higher danger level, and he wonders why. A creature that should be on the 7th level is on the 1st, but then he examines the body of that thing, seeing it all bruised and with arrows scattered around, noticing that it is bleeding. Well now, they were opened 10 years ago, and the long fight against demons ended with humanity's victory, and the reward given to the faithful hunting dog who dedicated his entire life to his family was simply this. Now that he's gotten a better look, he sees arrow wounds all over its body and wonders if someone was trying to hunt it. On second thought, the other side of the mountain is the territory of the barbarian tribe, and if he was followed there by those barbarians, this is an opportunity because a demonic creature from Hangek has suffered fatal injuries. It's an opportunity he needs to take advantage of, even if, to do this, he has to use all the tricks up his sleeve, as it's clear that Vikir has been hiding his abilities from the Baskervilles. After all, the boy's sword mastery had reached the level of a master swordsman, and his mastery with the Baskerville Third Fang had reached a level that other hunting dogs would only reach in adulthood. Then, he raises his sword, attacking that thing. But, while he attacks those Cerberuses, its other mouth comes at the boy. However, he also manages to deflect that attack and thinks he can do it, because he is sure that he can defeat a wounded Cerberus. He says that, in his past life, during the war against the demons, Vikir's swordsmanship techniques were honed to the point that he could not performed unnecessary movements when killing an opponent. Furthermore, his body was strengthened by the River Styx, and the weapons Vir possessed were more than sufficient to damage the instath, wounded Cerberus. Then the monster starts roaring at him, and he ultimately discovers that, contrary to what he believed, he wasn't able to inflict as much damage as he had hoped. And that monster returns the attack, breaking his sword and striking the boy's shoulder. And so, in a moment of carelessness, he gave Cerberus an opening to use its claws, throwing Vikir away with a single swipe, and with that swipe, the boy is thrown far away, slamming his back against a tree and spitting blood. Then he falls face down on the ground and quickly wakes up, slaughter, with him losing his head. And the reason he was executed was because he was a bloodhound who knew too much. He thinks he doesn't want to live a life like that anymore. And what does he? He notices that he lost consciousness for a moment, immediately after taking Cerberus's attack head-on. He feels pain in his left arm, wondering if it was torn, and when. He looks at it and realizes it wasn't as serious as he thought, and he thinks that even though Cerberus is injured, it's still strange that its wounds were so light, wondering if this is because of the River Styx's effects of the River Styx, and begins to thank the river for what it did for him. As the monster attacks again, he moves out of the way, thinking that even though he is injured, it will be difficult to survive a second attack. He notes that it is a difficult situation, but even in a situation like this, a veteran hunter always looks for the best way to act, and the best thing he can do now is the 36th stratagem, to cut and run and get away from that thing. He says that, if it weren't for the wound he received, he would have already been caught and torn into 1,000 pieces. He will need to thank the mountain barbarians later, and on the other side of that metal fence lies the outer perimeter, and he will be successful if he can reach the place he has prepared, and if he happens to be caught, before that, he's already dead. And the monster simply tears through that metal fence, going after the protagonist. He keeps running through the forest, wondering where he is, because he's sure it must be around there, until he finally finds it. Just a little further, that's all he needs to run, but the monster is almost catching up. As soon as he gets close, he just gives a jump, turning his head towards the monster, which almost manages to eat his face. When he moves away, the monster finds it strange. The protagonist falls down, lying next to that tree in the distance, and when he looks to the side, he welcomes those Cerberuses to the Cradle of Swords. He questions, who would have imagined that the trap he prepared to use against the horde of hellhounds? Want now is revenge, but there's nothing he can do, trapped in this newborn body, and all he can do is turn around, lying on his back. So, he says that being would be useful for catching Cerberuses. After all, just like the hellhounds, the Cerberus is a dog-type monster, and the bloody grain extract that he spread on the tips of the spears must be a poison to them. He actually starts twisting the other two heads until only one remains, and that head is still resisting. He notes that only a high-level demonic creature would still be able to standing, but in that case, he throws a spear at the monster, but the spear simply bounces off its armor and goes flying. Then, the protagonist further enrages the monster until it begins to count the seconds, calmly counting as he approaches the monster. Then, that remaining head begins to tremble, looking into Vikir's eyes, and finally falls dead at the boy's feet. And he thinks that it was exactly 7 steps, confirming the rumors, and that the wooden spear he just threw was a little different from the others. And it's hard to walk 7 steps after biting into a spear soaked with blood mamba venom. And it was a good thing he was able to do that when he was younger. And he is feeling the energy of the Cerberuses, and it seems that all 3 heads finally died. And besides, how is he going to take times with him? Because the cause of his death will be obvious. So perhaps the Guardian Knights who they saw him sharpening his spear, perhaps they will testify in his favor. And before that, he says there's something he needs to do. Cerberus is a guardian monster that has a habit of protecting its territory. And there's definitely a dungeon nearby that it was defending. And that dungeon is a strange space that holds treasures, but can also be inhabited by powerful demonic creatures. And now that the Guardian has disappeared, the chances of the dungeon being empty are high. And if he covers himself with Cerberus's scent, he should be able to avoid confrontations with transferred to the Cradle of Swords will be a great opportunity to get stronger. And now what he needs is to get strong. Then, he remembers the Cradle of Swords, which is one of the trials that most demonic creatures. So, he uses the dry earth, rotten leaves and roots, and the footprints and drool Cerberus left behind. He will follow these tracks back to its home. As he walks, he finally finds the dungeon entrance, which turns out to be the Cerberus dungeon. He mentions remembering coming here in his past life, adding that it wasn't supposed to be discovered for another 10 years. 10 years, but the inside was empty back then. Now, things are different, and the dungeon reeks of corruption. He can sense that the mana is still incomplete. He says the light won't reach all the way to the bottom, and it appears to be even deeper than he initially thought. Consequently, he grows excited, eager to uncover the treasures that await him inside as he ventures into the dungeon. Now that I think about it, how did he manage to preserve the venom from the snake he killed in his crib, from when he was a baby until he was 8 years old? That's quite strange. And with that, entering that location, he observes that ruby mining is a common practice in the area and must be connected to Red Fang Mountain, a branch of La Road Mountain. Then, he spots a light on the other side, assuming that he must to be inside the dungeon. And when he arrives, he notices how bright it is. Inside, he sees a huge ruby hanging above an altar, and he realizes it's even brighter inside. Another device. It must be a contraption that releases light by absorbing mana and sending it to the ruby. Then, he looks at the ruby, and beneath it, he sees a body, realizing that someone came here before him. Near the body, there was a letter, and he notices that the body has bruises all over, as if he had been attacked by a knife that was swung wildly. And the blood is all dry. It seems like a long time has passed. The letter says that his name doesn't matter anymore, so it could be anything. He will call himself Cain, and he sees no reason to tarnish. So, even though posting this manhwa is very dangerous, I took a risk and brought it to you. I sincerely hope you like it and engage with the video. Leave a like. It doesn't. The children of the Baskervilles must pass, and the children are thrown into a maze of swords and have their courage tested as they head towards the River Styx. And the River Styx is the legendary river. This pure white paper with his real name. He notices that the calligraphy has been passed down through the Baskerville clan for generations, meaning this guy was also a Baskerville. And then he speaks, who is writing this because he wants the people who come after him to avoid making the same mistake. Former legends of his family say that this is a specific place, an ancient dungeon, and his older brother, Abel, decided to venture there. They overcame countless trials while exploring the dungeon. They killed myriads of monsters, and finally reached the stone chamber, where they came across the bow. Final riddle. This enigma trapped them there for a long time, for a total of 3 years. He notes that they must have intensely desired the treasures hidden inside. If it's called the final riddle, it must be somewhere inside the stone chamber. He wonders if that's where it is. Then he reads what is written on that altar, which says that the one who entered was 1, but inside they became 2. But only one of them can leave. And so, with that dark enigma hanging between him and his younger brother, they pondered it for a long time. The two reached a single conclusion. They, as twins, when conceived in their mother's womb, they were one being, but over time, they were born as two, and therefore, to escape the dungeon they so desire, they must become one again. This means they will, having to fight. So, of the two who entered, only one can leave with what they came seeking, and with that, the killing began. And in the end, after a long and arduous battle, he killed his brother, and now, only one person remained in the stone chamber. But even after that, nothing changed within the chamber. The two of them have definitely become one now, but he still hasn't obtained anything. And he killed his younger brother, effectively murdering him, and so he left that place. After what felt like an eternity of regret, he decided to leave. And if any brave descendants come, that makes a child's body as strong as steel. However, the number of children who can benefit from this effect is limited, and in an attempt to reach the River Styx, until then, he wants to tell them only one thing. That person must leave that place immediately, because all it does is drive people crazy with greed, and there is nothing to be gained in that demonic cave. And the protagonist is thinking that, basically, what he means is that, even after getting there, after overcoming everything, there wasn't any reward. Even though he isn't a twin, he was still given the riddle. This means that Cain and Abel misinterpreted a riddle, and the one who entered was one, but Dendra became two, yet only one of him can leave. He wonders what this could mean, forcing himself to think a bit more, because a dungeon that can't be attacked doesn't exist, until he notices something, finally realizing what the answer might be, noting that what befell Abel was a very unlucky brother, because there were two of them. They were stuck in their own concepts and were unable to solve that riddle, and the darkness of the tunnel contrasts with the light of the stone chamber. And the answer to that riddle is the dungeon itself. When they entered, they were one with the darkness. But the moment they reached the light of the chamber of stone, they became two because of the light of the ruby. Then, if everything goes dark again, the final stage of the stone chamber will be unlocked. And when he breaks that ruby, he realizes that the answer is his shadow. Then, that ruby starts to crumble and creates a staircase in front of Vikir, and he says that's why the brothers killed each other. He sees the relic inside, from the demonic cave, a sword that has 3 eyes, and it is said that only the lineage of the Baskerville clan can unsheath Bezeebo, and he notices that the sword there is Bezeebo, and this is the relic. That could be found there, and he says that he remembers seeing Beelzebub, the collar fly, in an illustration in a mythology book during his youth, in a past life. And in myths, first, in his previous life, one had to break out of the barrier surrounding the Cradle of Swords. Aeneas then begins his journey, thinking that he ended up being overtaken by his brothers. In the last, ancestors of the nascent demons that invaded the continent, there were 7 calamities, the demonic constellations. And in order to stop the 7 calamities, each of the leaders of the 7 great clans entered the battlefield to confront the demonic constellations. And at that time, the leader of the Baskerville clan faced Bezeebo, the fly of gluttony, and so forth. Beebu's subjugated forces were sealed within Baskerville territory, and the demonic energy unleashed by Beebu caused monsters to gather. At least, that's how the legend goes. But nobody believes it these days. However, that legend was actually true, and in the future, this sword will fall into the hands of demons, bringing death to countless humans on the battlefield. But in this life, that won't happen, because he is taking the sword, and now it will be his. And when he reaches out to pull it, he feels something strange happening, and the sword begins to enter his hand and coalesce into a mark on the back of the boy's hand. Until that mark takes shape, he can pull out the sword simply by swinging his hand. It's a sword made of remains of a demonic constellation, and obtaining Beelzebub was quite unexpected for him. He wonders just how much stronger he can become in this life after acquiring that sword, and with that, he becomes quite anxious to see how far he can go. And, after taking the sword, he notices that there is nothing left for him there, questioning whether he should leave. But then he feels something that affects him in such a way that it makes the boy fall to the ground. He wonders what it is, thinking it's dizziness. But no, it's hunger. And he looks at his hand, seeing that that thing is telling him to give it something for her to eat. As he leaves, he notices that this monstrous appetite makes his stomach feel as if it's being torn apart, and his sense of smell is more sensitive than normal because of the hunger. And but this time it will be different. And everyone watches the boy heading towards the river and falling into it. He thinks that this time, the Styx's blessing will be his alone. So, when he enters, thinks that there is something with a delicious smell nearby. Then the sword begins to lead him on its own, with a tongue sticking out of his hand. He notices this, realizing that it is telling him that it has something to eat around there, so he heads over to the corpse of the hellhound he killed earlier. Then, the sword plunges into it, beginning to suck out everything inside the dog. He notices that his blood is being absorbed by Bibor, making it feel like his stomach is finding its place again, and he says he thinks that thing has been hungry for a long time. It's possible that the droughts and dead land on Mount La Road et Noir were caused by Bibor's absurd hunger. He begins to think that maybe that's really what happened, questioning how much food he will have to give it to satisfy this thing. Then, the sword completely changes shape and stops disturbing the protagonist. Then, the level 1B plus Hellhound's hemorrhage disappears, replaced by that dog's ability. He notes that Buzabu's unique ability is a gluttonous fly, and it was known that she had the ability to take the abilities of opponents for herself, and she could practically absorb the infinite number of skills, and those whose skills were absorbed ended up destroyed. However, he believes the maximum he can absorb is 3 for now, due to him only being a corpse, and the way he managed to obtain the Hellhound's hemorrhage is undeniably a very good skill, as it's a skill that causes even the smallest scratch to expel an absurd amount of blood. But then, he thinks that if he can steal the skill, he should go for another one. But then, that sword starts messing with him again, telling him that he can't eat everything, as it will be difficult to explain later if they find a body that's too badly damaged. So he keeps looking, seeing that that thing is finishing off Cerberus as well, but tells it to stop. Then the music remains. He begins to dive into the water, losing all the blood he accumulated along the way, and receiving the blessing of that river. And he says that the river is completely changing him, that he has crying from the slap he gave her. And now he has 2 more abilities. One is Cerberus's Incinerate, and the other is the Norwegian rat's Accelerated Regeneration. And he thinks about this accelerated regeneration, seeing the rat underneath that dog, and he notices that it also ate the rat's corpse hidden beneath Cerberus. He notes that he had obtained the ability to incinerate from Cerberus, and she was amazing. And, if you consider that one of the worst deaths is being burned alive, this is a much stronger ability than the Hellhound's hemorrhage. And he says that he has already finished preparing the demonic creature for the practical test. So, he wonders if he can relax now, and, a while later, all those cadets gather together, with some of them badly injured. And it is said that the young hounds of the Baskervilles returned after finishing the practical trial, and the evaluation was held soon after, and the corpses of the demonic creatures that the young hunting dogs had caught were transformed into shields, swords, collars, etc. And after that, the items were returned to the boys as their spoils, and one of the corpses, brought by one of the children, it shocked all the Baskervilles present. And Hugo asks who took it, and the butler replies that it was the young master Vikir, aged 8, who accidentally entered the area. Unexplored during the exam and hunted Cerberus, a monster with a danger rank above normal. Enrique Llanos is talking about the same Cerberus, which is a high-level demonic creature that his night guardians have difficulty facing. He says that he was warned that Cerberus had already been injured by mountain barbarians, and also poisoned. But Hugo asks what kind of venom is strong enough to take down a Cerberus, and where did he get it from? Then he says there's nothing like that in the hunting record. He tried to ask the young master, but, sure that having a different start in life will make a big change in his future. He needs to endure it as long as he can, and no matter how painful it is, he needs to withstand it. So, everyone, he returned to the dorm saying he was tired, and Hugo notices that that brat is very smart, and he thinks that knowledge is power, and power represents his value. Then the butler says that in order to be honest, he was extremely surprised that such talent came from Invan and not Alamia. However, Hugo says the butler doesn't really know him, not at all. He doesn't understand very well, and Hugo explains that he's different from the old patriarchs. He doesn't care about bloodlines when breeding hunting dogs, or whether they're the children of a noblewoman or a prostitute. What matters is only their talent and determination. He's saying that even weaklings can come from good bloodlines, asking if the butler understands what he means, and he wonders if Hugo is referring to his second son, who is training in isolation, and apologizes to Hugo. But Hugo says everything is fine, though he needs something to improve his mood, and the butler says that he will call the young master Vikir. And Vikir once again stands face to face with Hugo, who says he heard that Vikir killed a Cerberus during the practical exam, asking how the boy managed to kill him, and he says he gave him chocolate to eat so he would die. Then Hugo asks about that, and the boy says that chocolate is practically a lethal poison for dog-type creatures. Then he questions if that was why the boy asked for chocolate, and Vicky confirms it, and the butler notices that they have already jumped into the questions and answers without even Mani not saying hi, wondering if this is the same conversation between father and son. And he mentions that he also learned that he didn't respond when he asked about the details of the hunt, questioning why. Vicky simply says it's because he's not his master. Then Hugo asks who his master is, and he replies that, as he is a member of that clan, the patriarch is his master, asking who else could it be. The men outside are saying that they need to get the little boy out of there, because if he stays submerged any longer, he'll die. They insist they have to get him out and dry him off quickly. Hugo says that he learned correctly, and as a reward, the corpse of the demonic creature he captured will be entirely his, and because he came in first place on the practical exam, he will grant a wish. And the protagonist says that he has been waiting for this, and now he will be able to get everything he has always wanted. He says he wants to enter the library of 10,000 books, surprising the two people in front of him. And he talks about this library, which is a huge library located in the deepest parts of the main Baskerville castle, and is one of the largest in the Empire. Then Hugo talks about this library, saying that the protagonist should know that only the patriarch, the vice-patriarch, and the members of the main house can enter there, and that if something is allowed, then he will give up, realizing that apparently his only choice will be to sneak in there. Then Hugo says that he can enter, leaving the protagonist very surprised, and Hugo says that in the deepest parts of the library, he wants the boy to read about the Baskervilles' 6th sword technique, which is located in the 6th restricted area. So he is very surprised by this, be giving him the 6th fang, because Hugo is allowing an illegitimate child to read the 6th fang. He mentions that there has never been a case where an illegitimate child with the name Van read beyond the 4th fang. He thinks he doesn't need to be nervous because, after all, it's only the 6th fang, and currently, Hugo is only on the 7th fang, and in his past life, he already would manage to reach the 9th fang, and he still hasn't forgotten the ridicule he received for being an illegitimate son. In this life, he says he will surpass Hugo because he will obtain the church's deed that contains the true, pure essence of the Baskervilles, and it was only discovered in the future, in his past life, and was written by the first Baskerville patriarch, who killed 7 calamities. And who will? Hugo starts laughing and asks Baror how long it's been since he went under the river. Baror believes it's been 7 minutes and identifies him as the family butler. Upon learning that it's been, give him this deed, he says, is Grandma Hugo Le Baskerville, and he will deliver it into his hands. And Hugo says he is looking forward to his future, wishing his son good luck. So, Prota simply thanks him, saying that he will do his best to meet his expectations, and that he won't even know the true value of what he is giving him. And so, Prota enters the library, and there, inside, he says that this is the first time he is seeing everything there in person. He sees several famous family books, and the writings on all the types of swordsmanship that he wanted to learn before regressing are there. And in the Baskerville clan, no matter how much mana an illegitimate child has, they are not allowed to learn swordsmanship above the level of prey. Attractive. It is a rule within the clan, so that the pawns, with the future of being hunting dogs, do not turn their claws towards the direct descendants who will become the masters. So he goes to that book, arrested, and is surprised that Hugo would suggest a 6th fang swordsmanship for him, saying that he would never have dreamed that this would happen, not even in a million years in his past life. Then he says that he's sure Hugo only left because he thought it would be impossible for an 8-year-old to memorize everything in a single day. But before his regression, he had studied the theory behind swordsmanship from the 1st to the 4th claw relentlessly, even reaching the point where he could correctly guess the theory behind the 5th claw, which he never managed to fully learn. And after conquering the 4th claw, he had to disrupt the flow of mana once, which is why he was unable to reach the 5th claw. And in Baskerville swordsmanship, each level is defined by claws. So, level 1 is 1 claw, and level 2 is 2 claws, each characterized by the crimson aura of the blade. When he exposes his claws, he says he doesn't care about the 6th level, and that he has a different objective there. After 7 minutes, Hugo thinks he really might die. But then one of the men calls for the patriarch, who simply orders the boy to get himself out of there. Vikir hears Hugo's voice, who says it's not today. What he wants is to reach an even higher level. At that moment, the guards at the door ask if he's already leaving, and they remind the boy that the fencing scriptures are back there, asking if he's leaving. To retrieve something he forgot, they go to get it for him, but the protagonist says he's already finished there. They are surprised, suggesting that he could read more before leaving, but he replies that he only intends to skim over. Read over some other scriptures before leaving. They can ignore him and continue with their work. Then he passes by and starts to ascend the stairs, and they gossip behind the boy's back, commenting that it's not right to have nothing but varied and mixed scriptures lying around like that. And the other one says that, if it were him, he would be reading the ones located deeper inside, and they wonder if he doesn't know their value, because he is new, perhaps. So the protagonist thinks whatever he wants. After all, there's no way for them to know that. Among these mixed and dusty scriptures, there is a hidden treasure. While the boy walks, he notices that the beauty is there, and he finds the attractive prey. He confirms that this is it, and he's sure. A basic scripture for the first claw, which not even the children of the Baskerville clan can master beyond this. And, because the middle pages are cut out, it's no surprise that he's classified as just another writer, but he knows the true value of that book and his regression. Your hunting unit found a strange relic within the forest, on the border between Mount Lu and Lenoir. It turned out to be a fragment of a swordsmanship scripture, a single page torn out, loose, a single page of scripture containing the handwriting of the Baskerville clan. Sensing something was amiss, Hugo ordered a search of all 10,001 books in the library to find the original book. And that book was the swordsmanship scripture, known as the Alluring Fang. This scripture, written personally by an ancient Baskerville, details the method to, as easy as it sounds, to get back up. He has to push himself to absorb as much as he can, but while trying to absorb the water, he goes too far and starts suffocating. Reach the 10th Fang. Consumed by the idea of the 10th Fang, Hugo sent the hunting dogs to find the 6 missing pages. After discovering that the remaining page was hidden within each of the other 7 great clans, Hugo nearly declared war on them, unleashing his hounds on anyone who resisted. And, after countless sacrifices, they managed to deliver all the missing pages to Hugo. And the reward for all of this was simply Hugo saying, "Good job." And Prota thinks that this life was pointless. And thanks to that, Logo managed to overcome the 7th prey and progress to the 9th. And after using the blood from the hunting dogs' bodies as fuel, he succeeded, but he says that it will happen this time. And he was the bloodhound who recovered all the pages, and he remembers the contents of all the lost pages. But the reason he was never able to go beyond the 4th prey is because he never saw the original text. Then he reads that the first step of the 10th prey is similar in essence to the first. And from the moment you demonstrate aggression, while he draws his sword and readies his bow, all paths lead to the same outcome. And he says, of course, because most people would consider this book to be worthless garbage, filled with nonsense. But as soon as he puts the missing pages back in their proper order, the content, which initially seems like a pretentious fantasy, becomes a puzzle that transforms into an incredible painting. Before his regression, he was at the 4th Fang level and a high-ranking Aura graduate, and he's determined to become as strong as he was before regressing, even before he turns 15. So, he stays up all night reading it and decides that this should be enough, noting that he has been completely focused all day. But thanks to this, he has memorized the entire book, to the point where he can recite it backwards and cost anything. It's really free to like, subscribe, and share the channel so we can reach our goal. We're just a little over 3,000 subscribers away, and also to get so he realizes he needs to calm down and hold on until things settle. He enters the lake himself and pulls his son's foot, telling him to just focus on him because he can't. Forwards, he doesn't sense the presence of the Guardians, saying that he might be unable to unleash all 10 fangs with a child's body, but perhaps he can reach the 5th fang now, something he never even achieved in his past life. Then, he finds himself face to face with the imaginary opponent, and releasing his hold, he kills it with the 1st fang, the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th. Then, he tries to progress, and says that before regressing, he had a bad life, and managed to obtain the highest aura ranking with a lot of hard work. But he despised the main house because he was unable to learn a grima appropriate for it. And the only reason he never managed to reach the 5th fang or higher is because he was an illegitimate child. He says he won't live a life like that again, aiming for the 5th fang and trying to achieve it. But then he focuses that character on the old version of himself from his past life, successfully executing the 5th fang. He thinks it's not complete, but he managed to unleash it. And the boy can only be happy and excited in the midst of all this. It was a warm feeling, emanating from his heart, almost making him choke up, and Vikir wanted to cry with happiness at having reached the 5th fang, but then he notices that there is no sword nearby. In the entire history of the Baskervilles, this was the first time that a hound's fangs, hunting, were growing so fast and were aiming for their master's throat, and he thinks that since he managed to develop the 5th fang, if he can increase his mana now, he will manage to get to the point where he was before turning back. And the mana hole is constantly growing and expanding across an entire dimension through enlightenment. This time, this flow of liquid aura is the mark of a graduate, and it seems like he has risen from a high-rank expert swordsman to a low-rank graduate. And the level he reached at just 8 years old pleased not only to dive into the river, he also drank the water, claiming that his teeth even grew in a short time. Then, he asks what the child's name is, and Bar responds that, compared to when he was 30 before he came back, it's really good. A graduated swordsman is on a totally different level than an expert, and as the gaseous aura takes on a liquid form, its density increases and the inerasa, his shape-shifting ability becomes less restricted. He also acquired better swordsmanship than he previously possessed, and it's a shame that it doesn't stop at the 5th form, since he could potentially reach the 10th. He's a fangs user, and one with infinite potential, and the canine dismemberment he learned previously would allow him to become stronger and faster, but the limits of his growth were quite clear. Compared to that, the alluring fang is the perfect gigma that combines attack and defense, and has no limit to its growth, and if he concentrates, he'll even be able to face a graduate of the intermediate level. He'll have a 100% chance of success if it's an assassination, and a 50% chance of success if it's a frontal attack. And the problem is how much he should reveal to Hugo, because the amount of strength he reveals can't be too much or too little. He has to place enough expectations on Hugo to be able to continue enjoying the benefits. So, he pulls something out of his sleeve, a magnifying glass. With that magnifying glass, he burns the book so that no one can know it existed. And with that, Doug and his hounds arrived at their 10th prey. It's gone, except for himself and everyone else. They wonder what that smell is while the boy is setting something on fire, and they ask him what he did. He apologizes because he ended up burning the book due to his carelessness, leaving the magnifying glass on it. Magnifying glass on it. And he says that if it is necessary to report this, he will speak to the butler himself. But then they tell him he doesn't need to apologize for that, saying it's their fault for not taking good care of him. And besides, it's a relief that it was only a few books that were burned. He agrees, saying they were all common, but asks if the knights aren't busy with that's Vikir Van Baskerville. He recalls Vic saying that a seemingly greedy son was born into their family. However, the protagonist states that Hugo can love him as much as he wants, because conflict over the Mogg family and the Rubia mine, saying that they probably don't have time to pay attention to all these little problems like this, and says that maybe it would be better to consider it that way. It never happened, and one of them says that if the young master can turn a blind eye to it, everything will be fine. He says that they will keep this secret just between themselves. They must be very busy begging, sorry for taking up their time. And they think that Fikira is a good person, saying that he even took his servants' perspectives into consideration, remarking that he is a respectable young man. Respectable, but Prota thinks his plan worked out perfectly. Then he returns to Hugo, and Yogo asks if he has come to a clarification, so he says yes, and asks what he felt and perceived inside the library. He says it's something warm, sharp at the same time, soft, and malleable, something like that. Then the butler is surprised, asking if it could be the aura. The aura is proof that someone has truly entered the world of swordsmanship, and even prodigies who train without rest need to be at least 15 years old to enter the realm of experts in order to succeed. Low level. Then Hugo asks what he's thinking, because he's just an 8-year-old boy asking if he can show his father what it is. Then the protagonist says, of course, and it begins. He is taken inside a coliseum in front of all the other hounds, holding a sword. Then the butler speaks to the head of the family, asking what he is planning to do in order to test the young master's skills. And Hugo says he will send a suitable demonic beast for him. But the butler questions if he is intending to send a demonic beast after his son, and Hugo confirms that is exactly what he intends to do. He starved it to make him a little more sensitive. Then they bring an orc in front of the boy. It's completely chained up, but for now, he needs to sharpen his fangs so that one day he can bite and tear Hugo's neck, putting an end to Baskerville in history, and Vikir will do it with his own. It's still a dangerous rank, and everyone is surprised, asking if it's not an exaggeration to make an 8-year-old boy face an orc, since you need to be at least 15 years old to be able to face one. And they think that if something happens, he's sure the Guardian Knights will intervene. With that, Hugo waves down, and the orc is released, far too hungry and aggressive to go after the boy. Vikir simply waits and watches as the orc advances. As the monster gets closer, he calmly slices off its arm, leaving the orc confused and now one-armed. The boy attacks its leg, ripping it off and throwing the monster to the ground. The orc falls, already destabilized, and Vikir notices that it's in shock from bleeding for the first time, and the orc's unique ability of rapid regeneration must not have activated. There's no chance that a C-rank demonic beast could have stopped a B-rank skill like Hemorrhage of the Hellhound, because he is using one of Beelzebub's sword skills. Everyone wonders if he's really only 8 years old, questioning how he accomplished this with such a small body, and asking if he even is. It's possible to do this without using mana, and Ogo is surprised to see what his son is capable of. Vir notes that he mentions he hasn't yet demonstrated what he learned from the library, so he proceeds to do so. He's going to show Hugo exactly what he wants to see, and as soon as he does, Hugo and the butler are both astonished, because what Vir is creating is an aura blade. He envelops his sword with the aura, and the monster senses it. He launches a full-force attack on the orc. Then, with a single strike, he makes Zogo nearly leap out of his chair. The butler realizes that it's the aura of a low-ranked expert swordsman level, and congratulates the head of the family, because the genius of this generation has finally emerged. Then Hugo asks if that's truly what he believes, and the butler responds that among all the families in the Empire, you'll never find one. Hands. Then the protagonist speaks a bit about himself, Hugo's illegitimate son. At 8 years old, he was a genius to the world, but just a mediocre member to his family. At 20, he was the genius like him, but Hugo tells the butler to hold on a moment, because, upon closer inspection, the orc seems a bit odd. Orcs are known for their incredible regeneration, but this one isn't exhibiting it. Stopped the bleeding. Yogo says that he only won against the orc because the orc was severely weakened. However, the butler notices that he can't be honest with himself and truly be happy. But then, Vikir tells his father to wait right there, and Ogogo finds that strange. And Vikir asks if there is anything stronger than the orc for him to face. Seriously, dude, you have to stop coming up with these crazy ideas. This is going to end badly. He is showing off too much, and everyone is shocked by what the boy is saying. And the protagonist says that it is better to reveal a sufficient amount of his strength, because if he is lucky, his achievements will be recognized, and he will have a chance to separate himself from Ogogo. And he could, for example, be sent to the jungle, or enter the academy. Then Hugo says that it seems the orc they went to, capturing in such distant lands, is not enough to satisfy his son's hunger. And what Vikir says makes sense. He is at the age where he needs to continue to experience real combat situations. Then he speaks, with the butler asking if that was the barbarian tribe member they captured to perform experiments on. Then, he confirms it and says that there is exactly one left. Hugo says it's probable. He must be very sensitive because he hasn't had food in a long time, so he orders him to be brought over. Everyone is scared by this. The protagonist, face to face with it, notices that it is a troll, and that troll roars in front of the boy. And Vikir asks Hugo if he can begin, and he allows it, ordering the boy to go at it. Then, the protagonist charges at the troll, who raises his hand to deliver a punch at him, but he dodges the punch by going to the troll's back. However, he notices that there is no way to advance, and the troll finds that strange, while Vicky moves away. They notice that it passed close by, and that was an lead in assassination, reconnaissance, and subjugation missions. At 29, he was restricted by the direct family's talents and realized his limitations in swordsmanship. And at 30, the opening, but asks why he didn't attack. Hugo says that it was a good decision, as the troll's regenerative ability is incredible. So, if he can't inflict a fatal wound on one, with a blow, he will only be wasting energy. That's why you need to have a strategy if you want to hunt a troll. And the protagonist keeps running away from all of the troll's attacks, causing the troll to become increasingly tired. They notice that he is dodging all the attacks, and they wonder if he intends to tire out the troll, and if an 8-year-old boy can really make such a calculated judgment, those attacks, asking if this is what true geniuses are like. But the protagonist is also tired, as he is quite slow, and therefore, he isn't feeling too pressured, but he needs to maintain the pace. He knows that if he could reveal his true strength, he could easily kill something like a troll, but that would complicate things. He needs to kill it in the most natural way possible. And he says that a good method would be to use the troll's strength against itself when that monster advances towards him, and he does this by taking the troll down to the ground. And when the troll falls with that huge, injured in the shoulder, he starts screaming, and everyone notices that the troll has been cut, but even so, it will immediately recover from anything that doesn't kill it in one hit. And how? They thought, it must be impossible to kill the troll using Vikir Baskerville's first fang, and they say it's already impressive that an 8-year-old boy managed to do all this. But the protagonist says that it's true that it's impossible to cut through the troll's tough hide with just the first fang, and if he used Bzebu's bleeding ability, the troll would die after a 5-5 time, but that wouldn't make sense. Then Hugo says that he can stop now, because if he continues, it could be dangerous, so he says that's enough. But the protagonist says he almost defeated him and thinks he can. The gate connected to the demonic world opened, and demons began their invasion. At 35, He had endured the age of destruction and had already killed many demons. At 39, the war discovers something if he keeps fighting, and if he can't kill it in his next attack, he will give up the fight. Then Hugo gets a little tense, but tells the boy to continue, and the troll becomes increasingly irritated, wondering how much power he should reveal. However, he believes the answer has already been decided, and imbues the sword with the aura once more. He states that he wants to create a scenario where it appears he gained enlightenment and became wiser during the fight. As the troll charges, the boy prepares himself and says he is looking forward to seeing Hugo's reaction to this, summoning his fangs. The fangs attack the troll, and he manages to remove its head in a single blow. The butler and everyone around are left speechless. He explains that within the Blood and Iron Baskerville clan's swordsmanship, a person's life is based on a formula. It is around the age of 15 that the Baskervilles insert mana into the sword and emit an aura. At this point, most hounds learn the first fang technique of the Baskerville Grim Reaper style. But for the first time in the Baskerville clan's history, the prey that the brothers wouldn't achieve until they were 18 was attained by an 8-year-old boy, and a regular was born. Then, Prota smiles widely, saying that it looks like he won, and Hugo is terrified by this, wondering what they just witnessed. And so, a week later, Vikir is with the other hunting dogs in the cafeteria eating, and says that no matter how much he eats, he can't get used to this stew of random meats, so everyone there is scared of the boy. He says that they have been staying away from him since that day, and he thinks that it's to be expected among the Baskervilles, where strength is everything. And seeing Hugo surprised was incredible, and even after Vikir left, he still remained petrified in his chair, saying that the war between the worlds ended with the victory of humans. At 40, he was rewarded for his loyalty like a bloodhound, and his reward was false accusations, slander, and a sentence of, revealed to everyone was the Baskerville's second fang, the strength of a mid-level swordsman, and his true strength is a weak 5th Baskerville fang, approximately the strength of a rank graduate. Low, especially considering the troll skill he acquired. He's likely stronger than your average graduate, but he's noticed his appetite has definitely increased since obtaining it. Boozaboo. Just then, the 3 twins approach the protagonist, and Vikir finds it strange, wondering what they want. He questions if he was too lenient with them before, but they deny it. That's all. They just wanted to tell him how awesome he was for killing Cerberus and the troll, which the protagonist can barely believe. He starts spitting out his food while they think he's having some kind of problem, and Vikir wonders, what is this about? Are they trying to befriend him, or are they trying to deceive him? He figures that getting goosebumps isn't a good sign. Maybe he should just hit them first and ask questions later. But then the butler arrives and speaks to Vikir, startling him greatly because the old man arrived without making a sound, and the boy, he's quite startled when he suddenly appears, telling the boy to hurry and see the patriarch because there's a rather strange situation. Meanwhile, from outside, a large entourage arrives at the Basker residence. Then, Adolf Morg says it's been a while since he's seen Hugo, remarking that he hasn't changed a bit and hopes that the annual event goes well. Hugo replies that the joint training has always gone smoothly, but Adolf points out that 2 people were seriously injured last year, one from each family, which he considers a problem, but Hugo dismisses it as mere scratches, adding that the Morg children seem rather dramatic. He says it's understandable, because they are death. So, disgusted by this, he comes back to life once again, waking up to a baby asking if that's a bee, wondering if that means he made it through the River Styx and was reborn, noble and dignified, and the 2 begin to show great hostility toward each other. It's mentioned that the Morgans, the renowned clan of wizards, and the Baskervilles, the clan of the Bloody Iron Sword, do not always. They were on bad terms because the former emperor had declared that Grima magics were complementary to each other, and because of this, the Baskervilles and the Morgs began joint training sessions. These joint sessions were held as an annual event, with only children between the ages of 8 and 15 participating. However, a problem arose. A Rubia mine was located between the territories of the Baskervilles and the Morgs, leading to a conflict that resulted in casualties on both sides. As a result, the harmony between the 2 patriarchs was lost, but they continued with their training sessions together, as the emperor had ordered. That's why Patriarch Adolf's younger brother came in his place. He mentions that he heard news about a prodigy who appeared, quote, in the Baskerville family. He claims it's a great blessing for the empire that such a rare genius, one who only appears once a century, was born into their house. But Hugo dismisses it, saying that's not the point. Adolf, noting that he's reacting to the praise of his child, it's quite unexpected. They say they are very lucky because they, the Morgs, also have a genius on their hands, and he asks Kamos to bring him and the girl over. I enter the place, and Yogo watches her intently. Adolf says that this is his sister, Hispan's daughter. Kamos introduces her, asking if she isn't going to greet the patriarch, and the girl asks if that is the thief who stole his ruby mine, telling Hugo to return it. Upon hearing the girl call him a thief, he ends up getting very angry, and Dove asks Kamos what kind of rude behavior that is. But the girl herself says that he, the one with the strange beard, stole the ruby mine. But he questions when he said such a thing, and she says it was before leaving the. He says that, this time, he has a much better starting point than before, but then a woman arrives near the nursery with a box. So, they ask her if she's really going to put that in carriage, 1 hour and 42 minutes ago. And Hugo is very angry at being called a thief and also for having received a backhanded compliment about his beard. And Adolf begins to. Miguel points out that there seems to be a misunderstanding, but then Hugo says that she's just a child and that he doesn't need to explain the morgue's educational problems to him. Then the girl keeps asking for her rubies back, saying that she can't do her research because she doesn't have enough. Then Adolf gets angry again, but Hugo interrupts him. He arrives very irritated, saying that it seems the morgues don't teach their children good manners. Then Adolf asks what he plans to do with the child, questioning if he is threatening a 8-year-old girl. But while Hugo is at a loss for what to do, the protagonist arrives, wondering if the morgues don't teach their children not to envy what belongs to others. So he joins, with Vikir, and Adolf wonders if this is the Baskerville prodigy, but then he notices that Kamos has simply disappeared from his sight. Then the girl asks what he just did, saying, and so Prota calls out to Kamos, noting that she is the one from his previous life, the iron-blooded empress of the Morgue clan. Then the girl asks, what's with his stupid face, but he remains lost in his thoughts, as she was called the genius of the twins even within the Morgue clan, which produced countless great wizards. And at her peak, she single-handedly killed every monster on the mountain, alone, and burned them to death at the stakes, earning her the famous nickname Blood and Ashes. And he remembers that the girl's beauty is captivating, and she even managed to manipulate the royal family, and was called the authority of the fire goddess. But that is only in the distant future. She's just a child now, and the girl asks about their ruby mines, claiming they are hers. However, Prota criticizes her. 2. Comment below and leave a like, because it's very important for me to post. If we break this like record here, part 2 will come in record time, because there's a lot to. The crib of young Master Vikia, and the protagonist thinks about that woman calling the other lady, thinking that no one would give him anything because he was the illegitimate son. Then he sees that, saying that she came all this way just to throw a tantrum, and they both watch as the girl freaks out. He says it's a tantrum. Yes. Then she says she will explain the reason for the ruby. Belongs to the morgues, so even a stupid mutt like him can understand. But the protagonist isn't intimidated by the girl's magic and says it looks interesting. And so, the girl simply creates an ice model of the entire territory, surprising everyone there. She says she'll explain it simply, using the model. He's surprised by the ice sculpture, because he thought they were going to fight. And she tells him that he should know that the high-quality gems come from the mine, which is located on the border between the Morgos and the Baskervilles, called the Joint Security Area. And the problem is that the mine entrance is in Morgue territory, but it runs underneath Baskerville territory. And as he can see, it's situated in such a way that the NEDs, Baskervilles, can't take the entire mine for themselves. This means that the ruby mineral vein belongs to the Morgue clan, but they are claiming that this invasion is disrupting the mining and reject her offer to pay the rent for that territory. And Adolf agrees, while Hugo doesn't seem to like what she's saying. And Prota mentions that rubies are commonly used as magical ingredients, and the Baskerville clan doesn't really need to mine rubies. And the girl certainly agrees with him, but Prota questions these territory rental fees, suggesting that it must be a tragedy for them, because in Baskerville there isn't a single idiot who would give up their land just to earn a few coins from them. And the girl doesn't quite understand, because he just said that the Baskervilles don't need the rubies. And Prota confirms that's correct. They are only interested in her land, and that's why he's advising her not to get involved. They are the only ones who. The box begins to open, and bloody black mamba snakes emerge from within. He thinks he can't believe they would put 2 rare snakes in there just for him to murder. And he remarks that there aren't many of them, are losing out in that situation. Then she gets increasingly irritated, but agrees, saying that she will make him understand who rightfully owns that ruby mineral vein, and these, it's your land, and that's the mine. And the girl simply gets the idea to reach out, asking whose arm it is, and the protagonist then thinks to himself, wondering if she's talking about the arm that's on her land, taking her arm, and saying it's his. And the girl turns completely red, looking at him, questioning what he's talking about, asking why she would be his. He questions who said she is his, and simply takes out a knife, scaring both the butler and Adolf, saying that he's claiming her arm is his, and is ready to rip it off. The girl doesn't believe it either, while Hugo is scared to death about what that idiot is about to do. And then, he raises the girl's arm, moving the knife towards it, and she starts screaming for help, and he gets up, calling the protagonist a fool, telling him to take his hand off his niece right now, appearing right behind Vikir. He actually lets go of the girl, so she runs crying into her uncle's arms, saying that Hugo tried to cut off her arm. And so Adolf asks Hugo what the problem is. Then Hugo looks at the boy and speaks to his son, saying that he thinks he went too far with that joke. But then he apologizes, saying that it's a common joke within the family, and shows that the knife is made of rubber. He questions this, asking what kind of toys they are giving to those children. He says he didn't mean to make her cry, asking Adolf to forgive him, saying that in the Baskerville family, it is common to play with toys like this from a young age. And Adolf asks if he thinks this is a joke, and Hugo asks if he hasn't hit his head too hard as a child during a joke. Women among the Baskervilles who would be called lady, and this is clearly being done to reduce the number of competitors in the bloodline. The snakes attack the protagonist, and he notices, speaking to the acting patriarch. So, Adolf doesn't have much to say, and Hugo says he's had some ideas about what to do regarding the Rober mines, and is sure that I'd like to hear that too. That's why they should complete the friendly duels first. And the girl gets angry at Prota, saying she won't forget this, and that he better be careful. But Vikir doesn't care what she's saying. And so the friendly duels between the Baskervilles and the Morgue begin, an occasion where children between the ages of 8 and 15 gather and battle. While those around 8 years old challenged each other in mana theory or sensitivity, the children around 15 years old drew more attention with their live battles. However, everyone's attention was directed elsewhere during this year's friendly duels. Representing the renowned Mage clan, the Morgue clan, is Camo, and representing the Blood Iron Sword clan, the Pawn of Stalins, Baskerville clan, is Vikir. And as requested by the Morgues, they will use practical training rules for an exhibition duel between the prodigies of each clan. And so, Sindro plays, and Camos tells him to prepare himself, because once she starts, she won't hold back. She begins to chant the magical incantation, invoking that circle, and they are surprised by that, since it's a quadruple enchantment from the girl. They comment that he is capable of casting a spell that is difficult for 5-year-olds, but casting 4 of them simultaneously is too much. And that's what one should expect from a Morgue prodigy mage. Then Adolf is overjoyed for his niece, looking at Hugo with disdain, and she casts those spells towards the protagonist. But VKI manages to dodge them all very easily, saying that her spells are quite flashy, but asks if she doesn't think it would be better if she just focused on only one. But the girl doesn't pay, that they are actually trying to murder a defenseless child. So, with a totally bloodthirsty look in his eyes, he picks up the snakes with his bare hands, thinking that this is really much attention, asking him why he cares, saying he's an idiot who doesn't understand anything about magic, using the sand wall to try and stop Vikir, but he just gives it a huge punch. Stepping on that wall and knocking it down, he says that her calling him an idiot ended up hurting him, and she notices that he broke the sand wall very easily, questioning if it's his power, which the Baskervilles acquire on the River Styx, thinking they have lowered their guard. Then she closes her eyes, waiting for the blow, but notices that nothing happens, and the protagonist simply stops in front of her, ready to flick the girl's head, throwing her away. Then Adolf is surprised that he just went there and flicked her, and she asks why he flicked her, telling him not to say anything, that he's going easy on his opponent, saying he won't let him get away with it. And the protagonist says that her forehead might hurt, asking if she doesn't think they should end things there before they get out of control. But the girl doesn't listen to him, uses the sand wall twice, and starts bragging that now there are 2 layers and he won't be able to get through them. However, the protagonist questions the point if he can just bypass it, but figures he'll play along, simply reaching out and smashing through those 2 walls. He taps her forehead. He says the real question is whose arm just went through that wall, and the girl gets angry with him, provoking him again, and he replies that the answer is that the arm belongs to the strongest person, flicking her forehead again and completely destroying those sand walls. The girl then collapses to the ground, clutching her throbbing forehead, even more irritated, and threatens to kill him by setting him on fire. The protagonist remarks that he thought she'd give up if he injured her like that, and it seems dealing with children is much harder. What's expected of the Baskervilles, but he says he's going to have to destroy them with his own hands, crushing those snakes until they die. Then, the next day, they arrive at the boy's crib, and she continues to attack him repeatedly, but he dodges with ease. He says that even though he could snap her neck in a tenth of a second if he wanted to, that would cause the biggest trouble of all. He wonders what he should do to calm her down, thinking it might be better to let others handle this problem. Then, he sees a boy fighting back there and ends up going over to them. And that boy says that, with magic like that, he can cut through all of them. And Vicky says that the idiot wizard who keeps casting fire magic is the idiot swordsman who cuts them, and that they could be someone else. And the girl asks why he isn't being hit by the spells that she keeps casting. So, she tells him to look ahead, not run away, and not face it. And the protagonist looks at that wizard casting fire magic, wanting to see if that Baskerville will be able to cut through it. And so the protagonist thinks that now is the moment, and tells Camos, saying that she better have defensive magic ready to face that huge fireball that's coming straight at them. And the girl can't even react, not expecting that. Then, Adolf shouts that this can't be happening, and a huge explosion erupts where the girl had been. With the onset of that explosion, everyone nervously searches for Camos, because she was there. Then, Adolf starts screaming, and amidst this, she hears her uncle's voice wondering what to do, since she managed to avoid getting hurt by the defense spell, but the fire spell burned her, all her clothes. Author, stop it, my friend. This is problematic. This is awful. Put some clothes on this girl, for the love of God. Aeneas says that even though if they can't see anything because of the smoke, if they see her after it clears, she'll become a laughingstock. She starts to cry, asking someone to help her. But just then, the 8, watching that scene unfold, members of the Baskerville house witness the terrifying scene of a baby sleeping peacefully, drenched in the blood of venomous snakes. And after that, all the nannies protagonist arrives, throwing his coat over the girl, and she is surprised. So, he tells her to use that for now. She questions why he is protecting his enemy, but he asks she should take the jacket back then, but she says that's not what she meant, and tells him that he will be exposed. He replies that he couldn't care less about it, and she keeps thinking about it. The idiot asks why he's taking care of her, but then she notices that his arm is bleeding, and he is surprised that they managed to make a scratch on his body, which was strengthened by the river. Stig notices that the idiot's sword must still have some aura remaining. Then everyone realizes that they are standing there in the middle of the scene, with the girl lying on the floor wearing his clothes, and Vicky without her blouse. At this, Adolf is very happy that the girl is alright. As Hugo simply observes, they notice that Lady Morgue is on the ground, but the one who is bleeding is young Baskerville. It is difficult to determine who won the battle, but they notice how the boy is in good shape, and say that it must be thanks to the river. They add that you can tell how hard he has been training just by looking at his muscles, and demonstrate an impressive talent for an 8-year-old. And the girl is still on the floor, completely red, looking at him. A while later, Hugo asks how the fight was. Fight with the Lioness Morgue. He says it was interesting, but that he learned a lot about the purpose of that event. Zogo says that a battle against a wizard is very different from a fight between swordsmen. Then he asked why he didn't strike directly, and he says he was confused about how to deal with the lady. Thus, he says that fighting with your guard down is just asking to be hurt, ordering Vikir to take that wound as a learning experience. And then he notices that Hugo is worried about him, finding it very strange, saying that he doesn't remember much about how the people who worked that day were tortured and executed, and the reason the dead snakes were in their crib remained a mystery. Only one person witnessed everything and knew the whole story, was during his youth, as he was always very cold, strict, and brutal. The rumors of his personality becoming so bad stemmed from the loss of his first wife and eldest daughter. So, he believes this isn't his problem. Then he asks what they should do with Rober's mines, and Prota suggests giving them away. And so, he inquires about giving the Robers control of the ruby mines, questioning why Prota suggests this, stating that the Baskerville clan's main task is to expand their territories, and the Red Mountain, where the mines are located, is downstream from the mountain, where the Monesos barbarians live, and will pose a problem. He continues that if they manage to use Clamor Glam effectively, they will minimize the damage that will occur during the expansion of that region. Then, Hugo says that Prota is correct, and once the Morgue clan receives control of the ruby mines, they will send a large number of people there, and all they have to do is push the Monesos barbarians into that region. Then, they will be able to deal with all the problems at once, and the rubies will be dyed with the blood of their enemies. And if that happens, the Morgue clan will have to think twice before entering his territory, as his idea is almost exactly what he had in mind. Prota says that of course it would be, since the idea originated with him, and he was the one in charge of pushing the mages and the barbarians toward the morgues. Even so, he says he believes they should continue to keep an eye on the morgue's actions, but the other guy disagrees. Needs to, since he has increased the number of bloodhounds guarding the area. Then, as they walk, they run into Adolf, who was already looking for Hugo, and Adolf asks him if they could talk for a bit before he goes back. At that, the girl blushes, glancing sideways at them. Then, Hugo asks what the clan representative wants to talk about. And so, 8 years have passed in Autocreja, and now he is attending a lesson. The teacher informs everyone that today, they will learn how to handle swords. He says he has one last thing to say, which is that they've been considering how they should resolve the issue of the ruby mines peacefully, suggesting that paying the toll to use is just one of several suggestions. Then he asks what the payment is for opening his territory. After that, Adolf asks about an engagement, which Hugo finds strange. He mentions a compromise between the sons of Morg Baskerville. Then, Hugo asks which child he has in mind. He inquires about his thoughts on the Baskervilles' eldest son, and the Morg's eldest daughter, his niece. And the girl finds him strange. Then he says that this niece is an incredible child. She is beautiful, intelligent, and wants for nothing. He is certain that she would be a great match for the child known as the little son of the Baskerville clan. But Hugo says that his eldest son will be 25 this year, asking if Adolf is truly aware of this age difference. And so, Adolf says that 8 and 25 are only 17 years apart, claiming that it's not a very big problem. Yes, my friend, it is a big problem for the guy. God's love is very great. But then, the girl declares that she won't marry someone weaker than her mother. And Adolfo tells Camus that if she insists on marrying someone stronger than her mother, she will spend her whole life alone. She states that this is her condition, explaining that she hates having such a large age difference and wants someone her own age, or even younger. And so, Hugo speaks to the child, clarifying that this is not the buffet of his choice, and she replies that she knows and has no intention of playing around. Then, she simply blushes, gazing at the protagonist, who remains in doubt, along with the other two. And then, Dofi, I can't believe she's interested in that crazy guy over there, advising her that it's better not to, because he has the last name Van, and he explains that the state in which one cannot imbue mana into the sword results in being called a sword beginner, and the state in which one can imbue mana into the sword, even if isn't a Lee descendant. And no matter what, he will always be a fish in a sea of sharks. And then, Hugo reflects that this is strangely irritating him, and comments that the important thing in an engagement is the opinion of those involved. They asked the son what he thought, and the girl looked at him with a huge, pleading puppy dog gaze. The protagonist then accepts, strangely enough, and simply says that he agrees to do whatever they say. Adolf asks, what does this bastard mean by do as he says? Then, he questions what kind of attitude that is to have with the only daughter of the Morg clan. Now he's questioning what that means, because it implies he's not against the idea, thinking that the protagonist is even shyer than he appears. And so he says that names and titles mean nothing in the Baskerville house. Lackluster people come from the descendants of L, and great people come from the descendants of Van. Adolf asks if he is sure about that child, moving in close to the protagonist, standing face to face with him. Vikir thinks about Adolf, a master of 6 circles, one of the strongest within the renowned clan of wizards, and a great supporter of his niece. He speaks with Vikia, says that she doesn't think it's very wise to tell him that, but he replies that they can't just let anyone become Camos's husband, and he says that an engagement is just a suggestion between clans, and it seems that he is not satisfied even with Baskerville's genius. But as Adolf touches Vikwid, he questions why the boy's body is so resilient, asking why he isn't responding, asking if he can hear him, and he says he stopped listening as soon as he said it wasn't very wise to say that to him. And Adolf is surprised by this, along with Camos, because to say something like that, in front of his uncle, he must have nerves of steel. Then Adolf starts laughing, speaking to the patriarch, and asking if he can have a deeper conversation with that boy. At that moment, Hugo asks if weakly results in being called a sword expert, followed by the state in which a liquid aura exudes from the sword. Those who achieve this are called sword graduates. And finally, there's the state in which the aura. He's really going to say that the Empire's wizard is going to argue with an 8-year-old boy, but he says that he's the boy who's going to be his niece's husband, and this isn't just a request as the Empire's vice-patriarch, Clan Morg, but more like an uncle. And then Camos tells him that he doesn't need to do this, but he tells her that she better be quiet, because this was bound to happen to someone eventually, asking the patriarch if he could give him the opportunity to do so. And then the patriarch says that if he's that determined, he can do it. And with that, the two return to the field of battle, coming face to face, with only Z and Camos watching. Then, Adolf speaks to Vikir, saying he is going to test his skills, asking him to show him what the boy is capable of. And then, Vikir says he understands, but thinks about the consequence that if he shows everything, Adolf might faint. Then he says he will give her the advantage, creating a jar with his magic. And then she notices that he is making a vase, and is surprised. He is using fire, earth, and water magic at the same time, perfectly. So he creates that vase full of water and puts it on his head, saying that he's going to fight with it. A boy like that, and if he manages to make even a single drop fall, victory is his. And the protagonist takes a good look, thinking that Adolf would be a difficult opponent even before his regression. And this is a great chance to experience his power and see what the old man is capable of. And this is also a reason why Hugo accepted this request. And Vicky is left wondering, before her regression, what would be his chance to beat him, saying that an assassination would have a 50% chance of success and only a 10% chance if he faced him head-on. But he thinks that there's no need to go all out, and he just needs to satisfy Hugo's expectations enough, saying that he wants to see what Adolf is really capable of, going all out against him. And then the strange girl says that he can't post about this manhwa, so it all depends on you. And without further ado, let's get to Dog in Pants. And at the very beginning, Vikir Van Baskerville, the hound of the Baskerville family, is fording in story, solidifies, making it possible to change its shape at will. Those who achieve this are called a sword master, and the patriarch of the Basker house, old Hugo, is a sword master. Runs straight to his uncle, as there is a barrier in front of him. And so, the protagonist tries to cut through the barrier, but fails. And Adolf talks to his niece, asking why she told this to. He says that the magic shield works best when used with swordsmen, and it will be difficult to pierce with most aura swords. So, the boy is surprised as Adolf creates more fire blocks right in his hand, asking why he doesn't go on the offensive, and launches them in Vikia's direction. But then, Kames tells his uncle that this is unfair, saying that he never uses magic like that when he duels with her. Then, she asks which side he's on, and declares that she won't forgive the protagonist for making the girl side with him. Meanwhile, Hugo is just observing, saying that he's attacking with speed, which makes dodging difficult, but not impossible, and it seems that he doesn't need to stop them. He thinks to himself, telling Vikir to show that old man what a young hunting dog can do. And Vic is surprised by what he is capable of, mentioning that the fact that he is 8 years old after regressing, and the fact that he had regained his knowledge from his past life. If he can use this well, he can get Adolf to lower his guard, and might even be able to kill him during that demonstration, allowing him to get him, getting more and more serious and trying to cut through that water shield. But in response, Adolf says it will be the same as before. No matter what he does, his sword will never pierce his shield. But while the boy keeps cutting, the shield starts to break, and Adolf is surprised that he is attacking the same spot without missing, and that he moves like a machine. He has to admit that his focus and tenacity are impressive, but anyway, the sword he is using isn't the best, and starts to break until it finally breaks completely. He says this is like banging your head against a wall, and the boy, all the children there are surprised. However, the prota thinks that Hugo had already become a sword master by this time, and says that he will have to recover all of his power after the regression. Before the should have considered the durability of his sword and his shield, saying that it's good to focus on a single objective, but that depends on who your opponent is, and the two people on the outside are quite surprised. And so, Adolf says that Vikir has talent, but is a poor support for his niece. At that moment, he notices something strange, as he sees a drop of water falling on his head. When he focuses more, above, he notices that Vikir's broken sword passed through the shield and shattered the jug on his head, soaking him completely. He is surprised by this. Vikir says that the jug seems to be full, saying he's talking about the vase, of course, and the girl is surprised that he succeeded and thinks that, even though it was a coincidence, he beat her uncle. This means that the wedding will proceed, and so, Hugo thinks about this coincidence, wondering if the broken piece of Vikir's sword accidentally pierced the vase, and he thinks about Vikir, as it seems he may be creating a hound even stronger than he thought. And so, 7 years later, at the Baskerville training camp, a monster is being unleashed in front of all the new recruits. They are very calm looking at that thing, no longer. They are so scared, and he runs toward those kids, but they attack the monster, managing to hit its horn, causing the creature to react. Meanwhile, the dog, from the shadows, Star Forsher watches. He says that when a stronger opponent advances, retreating is common sense, and they shouldn't aim for the vital point from the beginning, instead sending them to aim for the back legs to slow him down, as it's much more effective. But, while they are struggling, the triplets attack the monster, managing to hit it very well, making the monster almost drop dead. Then the instructor thinks this is exactly what's expected of the trios, and their crimson time is well suited for Baskerville. But even in this, an almost dead monster still, coming of age ceremony. And the professor, seeing the proto lost in thought, realizes that he is lost in thought once again. He then thinks about the boy's constitution, with a stronger body, receives a barrage of attacks from the others who were there. Then the instructor says that everyone did a good job, and that now they are all considered class sword experts, basses, masters of the first technique of the Baskerville Verdes. Therefore, they will now be completing their 7th year of training. And unlike a captive oxbear, the oxbears of Rue Mountain, they are quite wild, and not even he can handle the older and more stubborn ones, and they know that the monster they face today is nowhere near the ones they will face in real life. And death is a much more common event than they think, so either they use their bloodline to overcome it, or they gain experience to survive somehow. And he says that's everything, congratulating them on their graduation, and wishing them good luck in their futures. And so, they sit down to talk. They ask which order of knights they have chosen, and one of them says that their first choice was Doberman, then Pitbull, and finally, Rottweiler. And they say that, above all of these, he prefers the order of the Wolfhounds, and it is said that within the Baskerville clan has 7 knight orders, each established and operating with distinct purposes, including surveillance, investigation, security, assassination, acting as a battalion, and warfare. But then they inquire about where that bastard is going, stating the obvious. Vikir Baskerville is on top of one of those oxbees, and notices some boys. Speaking of him, they say they heard that he single-handedly defeated an oxbee much larger than theirs, and they also mention hearing that he's already proficient in high-level swordsmanship, adding that he can already use 3 fangs, and they believe that because he knows the 3rd fang, it means he's on the same level as the Shadowhound. The protagonist comments that this took longer than he anticipated, and is stronger from having immersed himself for 7 minutes in Restige, and a clearer mind that makes him capable of understanding everything perfectly. And young Master Vikir has a gigantic difference in talent. Hidden level is that of a mid-level expert, and he knows the 5th Baskerville technique. Compared to 7 years ago, he has barely managed to improve since reaching the expert level. Low. However, if he only considers Grima, he has already surpassed his level before the regression. Even so, his progress is much slower than he had anticipated. So, the butler goes to Vicky and tells him that the patriarch is there looking for him, believing that his task has already been decided. The protagonist agrees and goes to the patriarch, asking how he has been. Then Hugo looks him over carefully. But the protagonist also notices something different, asking what happened to the patriarch's nose. He explains that, while subduing the barbarians of Rouge Mountain, one of the archers grazed him, and Vicky is surprised, asking if he captured the archer. But Hugo says no, though he managed to give her the same scar on her face. But anyway, he congratulates the boy for his graduation, and Vicky simply thanks him. Hugo says that, from now on, it will become more difficult, leading Vicky to wonder if he will talk about the task now. Speaking about his return, Hugo was a junior knight in the Order of the Pitbulls. He was dispatched to Montrouge, constantly facing death for 21 years. And, like a disposable mutt, he was thrown into battle. Immediately. The Baskerville children are categorized as either elites or disposables when they turn 15. While the disposables die in battle, the elite learn about management and politics, and after countless encounters with death, experienced disposables become guards for the elite. The elite mature over time by practicing politics and administration, and the 5th technique of Baskerville exists so that the elite can match the extensive real battle experience that the disposables have. And that was why his Grima from his past life couldn't advance beyond the compared to the other young people, and you will be happy to hear about his achievements. However, what the Prota is thinking about is how many years it will take him to kill Hugo, and he is 8 years old. 4th technique, and Hugo would never allow an illegitimate son like him to pursue an elite path. Then, Hugo speaks to Vikia, asking why he doesn't try for the lower house of parliament, and so, the Prota is surprised and asks what Hugo means by that. Hugo explains that the lower house of parliament assists with the regional administration, legislation, and law enforcement of the Baskerville clan, as well as handling the clan's business and regional affairs when necessary. In short, he manages both the small and large matters of the clan. Prota is surprised that Hugo chose him, an illegitimate son, to pursue the elite course. Hugo states that Prota's achievements are far greater than those of even 10-year-old children considered geniuses, so he will treat him accordingly. He will hold the position of vice consul in the city of Underdog. Currently, both the consul and vice consul positions are vacant, and Hugo asks if the boy would like to try for it. Hugo adds that Prota is free to do as he wishes, but he still has something to say. Prota asks what that is. Hugo replies that he would like to inform him about the Morgue clan incident and the ruby mine. Then, Hugo asks if Prota is referring to how he ruined Adolf Morgue, and he says he promised a reward, asking if Adolf is requesting it now. The protagonist confirms, asking if he can borrow that, and the butler gets a scare. The boy says that if it's too much to ask, he doesn't need to guarantee it. Then, the father approves the boy's request, saying he trusts that he won't do anything stupid. And so, the protagonist tells him not to worry, and the father says that he can't get used to being called son, no matter how many times he hears it. Yogo, guaranteeing his request is something that shouldn't be happening, because before his regression, this would have been impossible. And when he leaves there with the butler talks to Vikia, saying that the patriarch esteems him greatly and, while being ready to kill him. But the other kids there are looking at him with a very murderous look, so they approach the Prota, calling him trash, and asking if they aren't can see this, since he assigned him the position of vice consul, and, instead of dispatching him to the battlefield, asks if she wouldn't call that royal discipline, saying that he will use it when the time is right. But then, Vicky says that this will only happen if he fulfills his responsibilities as vice consul. And he thinks that's a good thing because, by using his authority as vice consul, he could hone his skills in a safer way. And he isn't interested in current events, almost as if his memories of his past had disappeared. And he still remembers the sensation of when his head rolled from the guillotine, and he will make Hugo experience that same sensation. So, now in Underdog, territory of Baskerville, a bald subordinate is asking 2 league workers to ensure that the place is spotless by tomorrow, as their new vice consul will be there. And he is from the Baskerville family, so they must take special care, and they both agree, but they continue talking amongst themselves, wondering what kind of person the new vice consul is, hoping that he has business experience. But then, the other one asks if the boy didn't know, because he's apparently only 15 years old. Then, they are surprised and question what is expected of a child, since they're also in trouble this time. But they look to the side and see a boy passing by, and they approach him asking who this child is, wondering if an employer brought him, saying that this isn't a place he can freely enter. But then, Prota orders him to withdraw his hand immediately. They get scared, and he shows them a sheet, noting that the Viscount has arrived early, asking why he had to come a day earlier, and Prota tells them to prepare the women and drinks right now because he's going to throw a party. And the two of them don't understand anything. Quite a few strange rumors are circulating about Moven's legitimate son, and everyone is wondering about them. They say he dove for 7 minutes in the ridge, and on top of that, killed 2 snakes while he asking about this party that he wants to throw. And then, a banquet is prepared, and several nobles appear there. And Mr. Hugo Le Baskerville doesn't understand anything, and here, he is the Secretary General of Underdog City. He's extremely irritated because Vera's drinking on his first day, and he believes a ridiculous person has been assigned to the job, adding to his existing problems, because his predecessors were all fired for accepting bribes. Yet, Veer simply arrived, throwing a party at the workplace, making him question what kind of troublemaker this young man is, and thinks that maybe he'll understand the situation when the city is in ruins. But then Veer appears behind him, asking if he's the general secretary, which startles him as he wonders when the boy arrived there. The protagonist introduces himself as Vikir Van Baskerville, and then Chihuahua Baskerville introduces himself as well, explaining that he doesn't have a free middle name, which Chihuahua dislikes intensely, fearing the CIA situation will repeat. The missing middle name signifies he's an outsider, an employee rather than a blood relative of the family. He has to deal with all the addictions and the discrimination that comes with it. But then Prota thinks this is great, and Shiwan doesn't understand anything and wonders what just happened. Prota then speaks that he saw everything about him on the way there, and that he is a born underdog. He replies, yes, born and raised. And Prota says that he must know the pros and cons of that place, and affirms that he knows them. With how hard people like him have to work, he doesn't intend to interfere with how he decides to do things, so he will trust that he will continue to do a good job. So, he agrees, even though he doesn't really understand what's going on, asking if this is a new type of harassment, especially since he had asked to go to a party. So he says that the legislative system was in the crib. and the protagonist says that he knows those guys well, that they were the ones who attacked him when he was fleeing after the false accusations, and that they are also known as the Trident of, in itself doesn't seem to have many problems. But there are a lot of strange things when they talk about the judicial system, and it's strange that the boy has already read everything in that short amount of time, and Vicky says that the problem, the underdog aspect, is that many illegal business owners have become successful, and as a result, the underworld holds power above the law, so simply stopping illegal businesses won't solve the problem, and the bosses of the underworld businesses need to be removed. He explains that the vice consul's job is to create laws and enforce them, and he respects all laws already in place. Nonetheless, he will add a new law, which Hua finds strange. Vikir then says he will ensure the underworld economy is in shambles within a week, but he needs a reason to do so, and execute this law. Hua then questions why he needs a reason to get rid of illegal businesses. He responds that he is still young, and has just been appointed as vice consul, and he needs a performance to make his actions more convincing. In other words, he's going to stir things up. Joa then wonders what he is planning, seeing that smile on his face. Then, the next day, on what they assume he is doing, and he states that he will not tolerate any acts of violence, and that everyone should remember that the Baskerville family is watching them all closely. Following this, people begin to question whether he is, seriously, because he's too young to be saying such things, and at this point, the protagonist, Prota, is thinking that he's speaking like an adult, and that he's being very courageous. And then, Vikir declares that he will not tolerate any act of violence, and that everyone must remember that the Baskerville family is watching everyone. Following this, people begin to wonder, Hugo Baskerville, the oldest, the middle, and the youngest brother. Then they start repeating the same thing, saying they don't like the protagonist. He thinks they will become quite annoying enemies, if he is serious, since he's too young to be saying these kinds of things. And at that moment, Prota keeps thinking that he is speaking as if he were an adult, and that he is being. They're talking. He's from the main Baskerville family, and those guys will learn some manners as soon as their throats are slit. But then they say they'll stop, claiming they wanted that Chihuahua to be the new consul. But then, they question how such a young child will enforce the laws. And at that moment, the protagonist raises the piece of wood in his hand and slams it into the ground with all of his strength, creating a hole there, and everyone is frightened. Then, gesturing to the hole, he says that he will announce a special amendment with the authority of the vice consul, and the special law amendment of Vikir, Session 1, Clause 1, states that he will reward 100 million euros to whoever successfully removes this stake, and everyone there is very surprised. Then they start to wonder what he's talking about, because 100 million is a lot of money, and his law is established while everyone is wondering if he will really give 100 million just for that, since it's 4 times more than a minimum wage, and he just has to pull out one stake to earn those 100 million. Then he asks if there's anyone there. Nobody wants to earn 100 million and says they don't think they can do it, so he goes. In Article 2 of that same paragraph, it says that the person who removes the stake will immediately receive 1 billion gold, and the deputy asks what they think now. Then, one of them starts laughing, saying that this is ridiculous, and the boy knows it. He asks if he's messing with them, questioning what idiot would even try that, and they tell the boy to stop playing around and go to sleep, saying that it's not like 1 billion gold is going to change anything. Then the protagonist just stands there, while Chihuahua asks why they are being humiliated, and at that moment, the protagonist asks, in 10 years, and maybe it would be better to take care of those problematic guys in advance. But then, one of them points a dagger at the protagonist's neck and says that he heard that those who dive, if no one is going to try. In that case, he says he will immediately give 10 billion gold to whoever pulls it out, asking if there's still no one who wants to try, and everyone gets scared. Asking what the hell is going on, wondering if this is some kind of joke. They're wondering if they should even try. But then another person asks if the one who wants to try is an idiot, questioning what kind of consequences you'll suffer, telling you to look at the sword at his waist, questioning what that person will do if he's executed on the spot for finding you. Greedy, he says that maybe the stake is too heavy, wondering why they don't all think it's a bit of an exaggeration, saying that he's sure it's a trick, and that it's best not to get involved in these situations. And the protagonist wonders if there's really no one who will try. Chia goes to him, saying that they don't have that much money in her city. But then, someone raises their hand, and a little girl appears, asking if she can try. But then an old man approaches the girl, completely scared, telling Judd that she can't try, asking how she dares to get involved in this. She says that her mother is ill, so she has to try something, anything. Then the old man says she's going to be killed, but the girl begs everyone to please take good care of her mother if something happens to her. and the old man is left speechless, unable to react, as she approaches the protagonist, gazing at him intently, hoping that he won't kill her since she volunteered to play the fool. She wonders if they couldn't pay him at least a single coin, saying that she hopes they'll at least pay for a full basket of flowers, and the protagonist orders the girl to remove it. Then she starts to move that stake and actually manages to lift it from the ground, pulling it out completely. And everyone is surprised that she actually succeeded, and the girl thinks she removed it too easily, wondering if he, with his head ready to roll. It is said that this bloodhound, who dedicated his entire life to his father and family, was falsely accused of conspiring with demons, and this was the fate he faced. For a long time in the River Styx gain a skin of steel and are not hurt by anything. Then he says that Vikir probably won't die even if they stab him, and so he calls his younger brother to, will do something. And the protagonist, with a slight weakening in his aura, reaches for his sword, and she wonders if she's going to be executed now, questioning why he would execute her. Is it for disrespect towards the noble, misfortune, greed, and questions about who will take care of his mother after she dies, while apologizing to her? But then, the girl starts shaking as Prota shoves a bag of money in her face, hers, saying that there are 100 million gold coins in there for now. At that moment, she is surprised that he is handing over so much money. He asks where her house is, because since 10 million gold coins are quite heavy, they will need to take the money to her house, and will also provide her with a guard to protect her reward. And then, he caresses the girl's head, saying that this is the law, and it must be always fulfilled. At this, Giwa is very surprised, as are all the citizens, seeing that he is truly fulfilling the promise he made. And this display proved to be an opportunity for Vikir's special law to become even more famous than the Baskerville clan's self-governance law. And when you uphold the law, you are rewarded, and when disobedience is punished. This simple logic resonated with the citizens, who began to believe that the vice-consul was different and that Vikir keeps his promises, no matter what. That's what it is. He created a society where principles are upheld, and ever since Vikir's special law was enacted, lawlessness has visibly decreased, and the crime rate has been cut in half. So, they put a motto there, an oath to be honest and to always keep their promises. And as Shiwa finishes placing that sign, the protagonist asks about the Eastern language, remarking that he has good handwriting. At this, he says that he never thought his performance would be used so much, and that he has never been so touched in his last 20 years of work, but to be able to try. And then the younger brother goes to the protagonist, holding him and asking if he really stayed 7 minutes in regression, saying that he thinks 3 minutes with his hand covering his quote. Protagonist says that he cannot govern the citizens by force alone, especially since he devalued the law and didn't trust it. He thought a lot about how he could capture the citizens' attention and also leaving a good impression. And that was the result. We see Showa, who says he will follow him for the rest of his days, and now he can rest knowing that his efforts were not in vain, since he met him. But then, Vikir tells him to calm down, thinking that, in fact, this is the performance that Camus Morgue would give several years from now. For when Camus became the matriarch, the crime rate was close to 1%. But, of course, because of the fear she inspired in the citizens, they never liked her. He says that the problems are just beginning, and, since they used 100 billion euros as a reward, they will have to find a way to earn that back. He marks on the map the locations where there are potentially illegal groups, or where they might be hiding, in the future, and they will attack these places and confiscate their dirty money. But then, Joa asks how he knows where the criminals are. He says he can smell them, and that they are regions he tirelessly researched before his regression. So, of course, he knows them like the back of his hand. I question how much he has already investigated, and he replies that he is very meticulous. But just then, a man arrives calling him vice-consul and says that the Associação da Autonomia Juvenil do Salão de Vila Youth, Autonomy Association of Salão de Vila, has requested a meeting. Then Cho says that he thought it was about time, and Vikir realizes that the arrogant bastards of the regional elite want to see him. And so Chi explains that the Associação da Autonomia Juvenil do Salão de Vila is comprised of the Montblanc clan, the Pior clan, the Luov clan, the Chanel clan, Ferragamo, Hermes, and Prada. Mont Blanc, the Pior clan, the Luov clan, the Chanel clan, Ferragamo, Hermes, and Prada. And it is an organization that was founded by the second and third generations of the 7 native families of Baskerville. And his breathing will be enough. And the protagonist says that they say children are more cruel, so it really was true. And he says he's just going to play along with their game. Then the other two It's called the Youth Autonomy Association, but realistically, it's just a social club with moral pretensions. He wonders if these young masters have something to say about Vikir's special law. Then, Prota starts to think, noticing that the little flies have begun to smell the shit, and he smiles, saying that they will then begin to annihilate the pests that are consuming the city. And so, in a club located inside a luxury hotel in the city of Underdog, in a private room at the back of the club, there was a party in the VIP box that cost 10 million gold to rent the space for 6 hours. The participants were the 7 crucial members of the Youth Autonomy Association, and then they order everything to be piled up and brought over, because they are going to do another tower that day. And so, the second and third generation children of the 7 families located within the Baskerville territory are having fun there. So, they order those subordinates to drink everything that's spilled on the table, and one of them gives thanks, because thanks to them, they can drink these precious drinks, and will serve him until the end of his life. And he says no. No matter how much money he spends, the money keeps coming to him. He says they can do this thanks to the Baskervilles, and says that despite the demand for slaves continuing, as the demand increases, it's quite easy to kidnap and sell those barbarians. And one of them asks if this isn't all thanks to the Baskervilles, who only care about their territorial expansion, saying that it's good not to have to worry about the imperial family, as this club is much better than those in the capital. And they say that, in addition to that, those Baskervilles are protecting them, and thus, they are safer. And they even ask if, at this point, the Baskervilles wouldn't be their personal hunting dogs. And Lourinho says he's serious, saying that they're just idiots who don't care about anything other than think there's no way a legend like that could be real. And a minute later, they notice that the boy is holding out very well. And 3 minutes later, it's still the same thing. And so they reach 10, the sword itself. And it became clear after the Messi and Madonaro incident, and they say that they are guilty and that they shifted the blame onto others. And now, one of the most loyal families, the Messi clan, Madonaro was devastated when the Baskervilles decided to personally massacre them, and because of that, there are only 7 clans remaining. That's what happens when they try to bother me with those clans. There. But then, one of them asks if they've heard about the new vice-consul, and another says that he researched information about him, and it seems he's a newcomer with the last name Van. They mention the name. His name is Vikir, asking if anyone has heard of him, and they say it's the first time. They continue talking about protecting him there, and throwing big parties with women and drinks. So, as soon as the event is over, force him to pay for everything. They say it seems fun, and he replies that a 5-year-old government employee has no money, asking if he thinks he'll be able to report them for that. He says they'll claim it was a joke and pay for the event for him, and after that, he'll never bother them again. Then, one of the men from the area speaks to those guys, saying that the women arrived, and they begin arguing with one of them. But then Revo notices something different, asking who that boy is over there, and whether someone called for a male escort. But then that guy from the place asks if he doesn't recognize him. He says no, and that he entered with such confidence that no one questioned him, wondering what the boy thinks he's doing, pulling the protagonist by the hair. But then something happens. Everyone is horrified because that waiter's hand suddenly changes direction. He starts screaming. Then Vikir arrives there, introducing himself as Vikir Van Baskerville, and they immediately freak out, asking what the vice-consul is doing there. He asks who they summoned. Then they start to laugh, minutes, and they question if this is serious. Then they say that it's not fun, telling the youngest to let him go. So he even prepares to release the protagonist. But as soon as he, acting cowardly, saying that it's amazing he showed up there, and asking if they should continue with the plan, and they start wanting to see how the protagonist will react to having to pay for everything, say that they will keep him there by force and make him pay at the end of the party. But he asks why they don't just end the small talk by slamming the table and unleashing their full aura. So they turn their attention back to the boy and the tower of glasses, which completely bursts, spraying liquid everywhere. And they realize that the boy used mana manipulation to make the champagne tower explode just by touching the table. And if that's the case, he's an expert. The protagonist puts it on the table and tells them to measure him up, and everyone is terrified because they thought he was only 15 years old. And the blonde guy tells the other that he's an intermediate level expert and orders him to do something, but then tells him to shut his mouth. If they fight him, they'll lose instantly. However, the protagonist arrives and speaks to Ruel, and Ruvi asks Vikir if they are the ones who are going to pay for the drinks, and Vikir says that of course they should pay for their own drinks, asking if they were planning to make him pay once the party ended. Then Red thinks he made a mistake, and they question how he would dare do such a thing, and Loro immediately agrees, asking why. they would do this to someone from the Baskerville clan. They just wanted to test him. And Loro says that he surely already knows how corrupt Underdog City has become. They just wanted to make sure that he wouldn't be tempted by what the city has to offer. And the other one says that it seems like he has what it takes to lead, saying that they will definitely follow him. However, Prota, completely irritated, says that an owner can test his dog and give that redhead a huge punch, but he says that the opposite isn't valid, and a dog should never trust its owner. No. Looks at his hand, he realizes that something is wrong, because Vikir bit him and simply ripped off a piece, and the youngest starts screaming, and the other two ask what he is doing, matter the situation, and he whispers to that redhead, asking if he's become complacent since he has money and power. But that's only because he hasn't seen anything truly frightening yet, and everyone is scared to death because he simply finished off that redhead by throwing him to the ground, and he asks if they know why he did this, saying that if they don't know, then they will suffer the same fate. So, Loro says that, of course, they understand why he did it, and Prota questions himself, because since they know, he is sure that they will also understand what he's going to do now, crushing Red's head in front of them all. So, everyone gets up asking Prota if he thinks he's going to get away with this, but Prota says that he knew they wouldn't understand. Coming close to another one of them, he starts talking about robbery, kidnapping, illegal slave trafficking, defamation of Baskerville, and all the many crimes they committed, and the animals don't learn until he teaches them, throwing another one into the air, and he says that it's all fine, and that he will see what he can do to teach a disobedient creature a lesson. My friend, what the protagonist is doing here is a joke. This crazy guy is running out of ideas. Elias, sometime later, in an underground prison, the protagonist and Zawa walk through the area, and Zawa, upon seeing the situation, when those rich kids meet, they get scared, and the blonde talks to the protagonist, asking if he thinks he's going to survive after doing this shit, and says he's going to tell his father everything. And they'll see what happens as soon as he gets out of there. He will kill him, and won't forgive him, ordering Chihuahua to release him immediately. But then, he wanted to know why they beat him so badly. Him. And Vikir asks if he thinks he went too far, and Zawa says, of course, but he can't beat him to death, and he can't turn the person into a bag of meat. But at that moment, the protagonist tells him, then he asks what happened, wondering if they hadn't said he was going to let go of his hand. And so they start saying that they aren't afraid, but the youngest says that he is afraid, yes, of everything, not to worry, because he hasn't even started yet, and says that City Hall is supposedly the one who should be managing the perverse public servants and educating the regional society. But if he, transforming into a horrible organization that even ignores the authority of the Baskerville clan, which he can tell just by their arrogant expressions, and he realizes they still lack proper education, appropriate education, and as soon as dawn breaks, he will execute them all, burying everyone associated with them in the process. Then, Chua asks if he is serious, and Vikir confirms that he is, of course, but then they begin to apologize, begging him to forgive them, promising to give him everything they own, and pleading for their lives. And then Chua questions whether their families will be okay with this, and calls them cowards, but also bold, stating that they will not support him in anything he does in the future, and will even seek revenge, using any possible method. But the protagonist says he has nothing to worry about, because their families won't be able to complain, since those bastards are linked to criminal organizations from Underdog City. But what truly matters is the evidence. He claims to have his own methods, so there's no need to worry. And if he can't find any evidence, he'll create some himself. My friend, you're really getting way too invested in this business, you know? This is real, and it's dangerous, very dangerous. And he says he has no interest in the events that will unfold in this place afterward. Soon, the world will experience a sudden shift, and he will most likely be dispatched to battle soon. And even if that isn't the case, he has to leave that place in order to enroll in the academy. Then, he states his accusations: human trafficking, kidnapping, bribery, blackmail, threats through third parties, and murder. And they claim they've never done anything like that. All messed up, the two of them look at him. He says they ripped his finger off, so they tell the younger brother to calm down, because later they will go to the priest to ask him to reattach his finger, and if there is proof, they will gladly accept their punishment. But then Vikir asks if he will accept his sentence if proof is provided, and he replies that he said that as if he had already committed a crime, but there is no proof, and the Lord is left speechless. And Vicky says it's as if he's saying, he'll never harm your family, even if he has to die right here. Just then, someone arrives, calling for them. Wiesel and the protagonist are surprised that it's already arrived, and inside that bag is something that the executioner is bringing. He says that his custom order is ready and that it arrived in good condition. Time, handing the item over to him. Then, various torture weapons appear, and he says that this is the first time he's ever seen any of those tools. That's right, even though he has tortured people for 30 years, wondering how he came up with such frightening tools. And the protagonist says that he didn't invent them and that they were common where he came from. So he questions if Vicky came from hell, and Vicky replies that it's something like that, asking if he would like to learn. He says he will politely decline, as he might throw up everything he ate when he sees him working with them. So, the protagonist says he forgot, adding that during the torture in the Age of Destruction, even prisoners of war from the demonic clan vomited from the extreme torture, and the methods had evolved significantly. So, he prepares to enter the cell and mess with those guys, asking where the expressions of those who claimed they wouldn't confess anything had gone. Regardless of the reason, he asks them to please not say anything, as he wants to enjoy the memories of his past at least once. And so, the rumors spread quickly, and the 7 gangs living there were arrested at once. As long as there were more than 3 Underdog City citizens gathered together, that rumor continued to circulate. And everyone remembers that those were but the protagonist asks who said they could go. Then one of them takes the dagger and attacks the protagonist, ready to pierce his belly. But as soon as he attacks, the sword can't even wound Vikir's skin. Bastards who threatened civilians like they were the plague, saying they doubted the new council would release them anytime soon. But one of them says that they are second-generation members of the native families, and they were sure that he would only scold them and then release them. However, looking at the charges, others believed they would be executed, and they wondered if Vicky would actually carry out the point, children from the native families. But one of them called the other an idiot, asking if he didn't know the new vice consul's personality, especially since he burned through 100 billion gold with one stake. But that other man thought that FIR would cause a huge problem if he executed those 7 idiots, and doubted they would be killed. And so all the citizens said that this was a mere political game between the new ruler and the native authorities, and as soon as they imposed their will, the situation would be over. And as the citizens predicted, the Blanc, Pior, Louvre, Chanel, Ferragamo, Hermes, and Prada clans sent their apologies to the vice-consul, and the local powers had bowed to his will, sending a large quantity of gold. And with that, the 7 suckers, prisoners would be released and harmed, and the vice-consul would face a serious reprimand from the patriarch. And that's what everyone expected. But in reality, they don't have time for that right now, because one fine morning, the 7 heads were displayed in the middle of the central square, preserved with salt, and exhibiting expressions of agony, as if they had experienced excruciating pain, crucial in their last breaths. The public also noticed that hanging above the heads were detailed descriptions of the punishments they received before their executions, and at the end of that detailed account, it stated that, considering the criminals were already dead, their bodies, excluding their heads, were thrown outside the castle walls. And everyone is shocked by what Vic did, and he says he thinks they forgot that this is the Baskerville house, and age doesn't matter, as long as you have strength and talent. Then Vikir grabs the hand of the one who attacked him, and simply prepares to break it, saying that they are going to play a little more. Says that, since the laws were already in effect, there is no reason to be surprised, but this will be the first time that the sentences will be carried out by the region's infamous native families. That will bring about changes. He says that after they hear his war cry, they will start using their heads, and once the destruction of either side begins, the city of Underd will go through a bloodbath, and Chiwa better prepare himself, as he will be joining him in the next strategy. And Za is scared to death because the protagonist is secretly taking him into the middle of a party, and he talks to VCO, asking if this is really the right strategy. Then, Vikir asks if he doesn't trust him, but he says it's nothing like that. However, he asks if this is the right plan, because the vice-consul simply gave himself up like a slave, being sold through this strategy. And so, in Underdog City, somewhere in the vicinity, in a big tent that was set up in the middle of nowhere, luxurious carriages began to gather, and that is the day the slave auction begins. And of course, this event, which is illegal, was not reported to the Baskerville family. Their goods consisted of kidnapped barbarians, nobles, and commoners. And so, a man welcomes everyone to the circus, surprised that Clamin Blan has also arrived. This signature is an exclusive characteristic of Clamin Blan, and he mentions that, looking at the reason for the visit written on the identification paper, it appears that he has come there as a salesman, and Kiar agrees with this, saying that he came to sell. And since the Cayman Blan are valued customers who always purchase a large quantity of slaves, he asked why he was worried that they hadn't liked the slaves they bought last time. But then, he says it's nothing like that. He is satisfied with the quality of the slaves sold there. Then, he looks at the protagonist, who is looking at them. It was the guillotine. As he awaited his death, he swore that if he could live again, he would not live as a rabid dog hunting hares. And, in the midst of that promise, something happens. He opens, and they begin to notice that the rumors were true, and the protagonist throws a punch at, from inside the cage, noticing that he has black hair and red eyes, saying that he brought a rare product and will take responsibility and sell him for a good price. Well, they hand over the protagonist, and once inside, the auction begins, with everyone discussing the Empire's mysterious slave exhibition. They mention that this particular item has now been secretly diverted by the Knights of the Baskerville family, is Morciel, an S-rank monster said to have 19 hearts, a water demon whose risk assessment is also S-rank. He explains that they use everything, the leather, meat, bones, and intestines, ensuring nothing goes to waste. The auction commences, and the prices steadily rise, eventually reaching 250 million euros, the final selling price. Then a girl arrives, and is also sold for a very high price. Lastly, they move on to something else, announcing the arrival of a special product. This rare item was captured by the slave trader deep within the forest. It's a barbarian from Balak, belonging to a tribe of warriors from the Roger Mountain Forest. They then ask if anyone senses a strange feeling when they present a wild slave and say this will be their chance to put their slave training techniques to the test. Then they wonder why they would offer something like that. To sell her, since the girl is very aggressive and the starting price is 5 million, but no one is interested in buying. Ines, the clown who is presenting, is surprised and says she is going to lower the price drastically and offer her for 1 million, so they think it won't sell. Then he orders them to only bring out the guaranteed products and get rid of her. And the girl remains completely angry until the guy carrying her knocks the girl unconscious with a single punch. Then that clown says that a small incident had just occurred and, as an apology, right in the first one's face, and the other two are shocked to see their older brother fall to the ground. So, the middle one raises his guard to face the protagonist, but ends up receiving a huge kick. They will bring out their best products of the day, and the protagonist goes up onto the stage. At that moment, the nobles already quite like the boy's appearance, and the clown presents him as a rare item. With black hair and red eyes, he's a purebred boy who requires minimal restrictions, and since he's a very high-quality product, the auctioneer expects it to be a great auction. Suddenly, that first woman who showed interest in the protagonist bids 600 million, then the bids keep rising, with another person raising it to 800 million, and she asks him, asking why he's bidding, but he questions what's wrong with a man making an 800 million bid. He wonders why a man would want to take that boy. He says that it's none of her business, saying he wants to use him as a gladiator, but another person offers 900 million. However, another person who was in the corner offers 6 billion, and the presenter is surprised, announcing that they have a bid of 6 billion, asking if anyone will bid higher. So that guy up there is Baron Gambino de Granari, and they think that because he bid 6 billion at once, he must be very rich. And they say he recently acquired underworld money, and his influence has suddenly increased, making his finances quite surprising. We know that whatever he wants with the protagonist is nothing good, just by looking at that fat pig's face. Then, the woman next to him asks the Baron if he isn't spending too much. He replies that he can sell a beautiful slave like that for a higher price in the capital and will still profit even if he buys him now and sells him later. But the girl says that even if he can resell him, she thinks 6 billion is too much, and that he won't make a profit unless that slave's body remains unharmed. A kick, and is thrown to the ground as well. He tells them that they don't need to be afraid. They'll be fine if they get treatment soon, but he won't let them leave this place. At this rate, they will be. And so the Baron tells her to be quiet, reminding Cindy Wendy that he took her in because she had nowhere else to go, asking how she dares to act arrogantly and bite the hand that feeds her, leaving the girl crestfallen. Now that he's coming in close, saying the boy belongs to him and that he's not even human, which is why he shouldn't be nervous, adding that he's thought of many ways to play with the protagonist and is eager to start, therefore. But then, he raises his hand towards the Baron, wanting him to remove the handcuffs. However, he's not there to do that, simply shattering the handcuff and telling the Baron that there's no need for him to release him. Then, thinking that playing sounds good, he goes up to that thing, destroying the entire grandstand, throwing it to the ground, and asking what he thinks of playing like that. The theme is spear and shield. He'll be the spear, while the fat pig will be the shield, telling him to endure it and he'll win. Then, he starts bleeding, crying in front of Cindy, and saying that he's going to die, but ends up fainting in front of the girl. And the protagonist thinks that Baron Gambino is a little down, so he assumes he's won, at which point the protagonist removes his wig, revealing himself to be Vikir Van Baskerville says that he is actually dead. And yes, if they say Vikir is there, then who is the new consul of Underdog City? He questions why a dog from the Baskerville house is around. There, he notices that the vice-consul has already transformed into something bigger, and the protagonist then speaks to everyone inside the circus, saying that the name is quite fitting for the place, adding that everyone there shouldn't think they'll be leaving in one piece. At that, the clown becomes terrified, but orders his henchmen to capture that boy, because he's the only thing that matters. He is without clothes and weapons, ordering them to catch and kill him, and everyone jumps on the protagonist. But then he makes Bebo appear in his hand, killing those men, and so the clown sees that red aura, crippled forever, so he'll be generous and let one of them leave. They ask if he really means it, trying to guess who he's going to choose, and the three of them try to do something to escape. So dense, not believing that he has already transcended, and he goes after that executioner who is swinging the steel ball, and the executioner throws the steel ball towards the protagonist, but he manages to cut both the rolls against that guy in the middle with ease. The clown discovers that the protagonist is a graduate, and even though he knows he is a Baskerville, he questions how that's possible, since they are graduates in the city. Graduates possess such immense combat strength that they can represent entire nations, and if things continue this way, they won't have any way to win. And Shawa says she didn't expect his swordsmanship skills to be that good. But then, that clown glances to the side and sees that he can be used, and asks the protagonist to pay attention to him, telling him to drop his weapon and surrender right now, otherwise that guy is going to die. But the protagonist doesn't react the way he was expecting, and the clown asks if he isn't listening, and Vikir doesn't express much of a reaction, and Za says he's fine, telling him to worry about himself. And then the clown asks what he thinks he's doing, and Za says he can't disturb his lord, and after all, he'd rather die. The protagonist starts laughing, saying that he is indeed very loyal, but tells him not to worry because, right before they left the Baskerville mansion, the patriarch told him. So, he takes a whistle from his leg, puts it in his mouth, and starts blowing it with all his strength, making a huge ruckus, and everyone there is stunned by the noise. But, they realize that nothing happened, and the clown starts laughing, asking if that whistle was just to scare them, saying that even if he is a graduate, it won't do him any good. But, then, a sword pierces his neck, and his head falls to the side along with his body, and those Baskerville men appear there, startling everyone. So, one of them tries to attack from there. But the protagonist says that they are the ones who will choose, throwing the dagger to them, telling them to decide quickly, as he won't wait long, and at least one of them has to survive. That killer and ends up being calmly chopped to pieces, and pieces of him go everywhere, and the protagonist has a mischievous smile on his face, and several more of those men arrive there, and they watch everyone at the auction and can't believe those guys could be from Baskerville. The girl notices the tooth-shaped mark on her chest, and she's heard of this mark before, and they are the Knights, also known as the most cruel in the entire empire, expert killers, and, according to rumors, all 100 Knights of these forces are graduates and are Baskerville pit bulls. Then, one of them arrives behind her, and she starts to tremble, saying that she can't die in a place like that, but the protagonist arrives in front of her, telling them to leave her alone, and he jumps back. Then, he says that he can bite and kill everyone else, except those who are lying down, but if they move even the slightest bit, that is, he can kill them without mercy. And so, the pitbull leaves, and the protagonist looks back, noticing that Yogo has a personal interest in military authority, and it's a good thing that he sent the pitbull by safety. Then everyone there starts dying, except for those who are on the ground, shaking. They think about staying down and, when it's all over, getting up and getting out of there. But as soon as one of the pit bulls gets close to him, he says he can handcuff them. Then he says they don't carry handcuffs, simply ripping off his leg to stop him from running, and he starts screaming because of his leg. He says that those who are going to be sentenced to death don't even need their legs. And so, that leader of the pit bulls arrives there, calling his nephew, asking what he thinks of his pit bulls, asking if he was satisfied with them. And the protagonist says that he liked them well enough, his uncle Boston Terrier. And Boston says that as he closes the door, those inside are scared to death and everyone looks at each other, ready to throw punches. And V sees it from the outside and really likes how things are unfolding. Can help with anything else. Just let him know. that he is the commander of the Pitbull Knights, Boston Terrier, Le Baskerville. And now he understood why Hugo is so interested in that boy. And even though he's only 15 years old, he's already so clever and ruthless. He even says he's sure he would be a great addition to the Pitbulls. Besides, that uncle of yours would give him the best of his creations. But Vikir simply says that he will consider the offer, but he has other urgent matters to resolve. And Boston is surprised that Vikir still had the courage to ignore him, and that only makes him want the boy even more. Vikir thinks that guy is really weird, and as soon as Vikir starts to walk inside that warehouse where the slaves are, he says he thinks it's that way, and that's the safe where the money paid by the nobles is kept, and he is sure that everything from there is later delivered to the finance office. He says he doesn't feel very good about increasing the wealth of the Baskervilles, but that's not the most important thing now, saying that he didn't come all the way there because of that, taking the cloth off one of the cages, and sees that same girl who was beaten so badly for being out of control and sleeping there is now crying while unconscious. My friends, the protagonist is seriously angry. The guy thought everything through. Meticulously, he threw everyone into the deepest depths of hell. That's what makes a good protagonist, a completely clueless protagonist. He doesn't care about anything. If he has to kill, he will kill. And now I want to see how things unfold between him and this Barbara. And if you want to see what happens next, leave a like and subscribe, because it all depends on you, just like I said at the beginning. So, let's get to it, because I want to post more very soon. And I'll see you in the next video. Unfolding, mentioning that the Baskerville trident collapsed in on itself. Then, after a while, the butler speaks with Hugo, informing him that there was a confrontation with Clamor G in the Trident Ruby Mine, and the leader of the Mororg clan stated that the Ruby Mine is within their territory. But then Hugo says that they will have an opportunity to discuss this matter soon, and that the Mororg clan will speak with them first. In any case, he questions whether the butler has anything else to report, and he mentions that it concerns the recently administered test at the children's castle, informing him that the young Master Bestia achieved first place on the written test, and Hugo asks if that's really the case. Then he asks when the practical exams will be, and the butler replies that they will commence in 5 days. And the Knights, his eyes again in a place he doesn't recognize, wondering where he is, because his body feels heavy and there is a lot of noise around him, leading him to believe that this place is hell. Guardians of the children's castle have traveled to prepare it, and he observes that the children's castle must be completely empty now. But then the butler brings up another matter, saying that he has something to say about the children's castle, mentioning that there was a major fight between the young masters recently, and Hugo inquires about it, asking how many people died. He says that no one died, but the eldest Tremini brother's teeth were completely destroyed, and the middle brother's jaw was crushed, and the third brother simply had his index finger bitten off. He says that they received treatment and recovered, but the mental damage they sustained was severe, and Hugo asks if they didn't get along, saying that he doubts they would fight each other to that extent. Then, the butler explains that it's because they fought against another of their brothers, and the person who left the three of them in that state was their youngest brother. The young master who he mentioned had placed first in the written exam, Vikir. I probably misspoke earlier, but it was a huge and grotesque translation error. Just forgive me. And Hugo is shocked to hear the butler say that. Sometime later, Prota stands before Hugo with the largest caravan imaginable. Hugo comments that Vikir has grown a lot, and he just casually greets the clan leader. Hugo finds this odd, but nonetheless acknowledges that he is the clan leader and tells Vikir that he heard he crippled the three twins in the advanced class. He asks if they didn't receive treatment in time. Vikir responds that he wasn't talking about their physical condition, but rather that he had mutilated the hearts of the three, and from that day forward, they began to eat separately and stopped speaking to each other. Their triple combo attack was a work of art, but because of Vikir, a chasm now exists between them. Vikir then continues to smile, but it turns out to be the Baskerville mansion, and he's surrounded by many other babies. Then, the patriarch of the Baskerville family, Hugo Le Baskerville, calls all those children insignificant vermin and asks if the boy doesn't think he did something wrong, so Prota simply asks what he did wrong. Hugo then asks if he didn't crush his older brothers, but the protagonist declares he's stronger than them and asks if it isn't true that a strong person doesn't make mistakes. Then, Hugo mentions that his older brothers had come there before he arrived, and they generously forgave him, and asks if he still doesn't feel any guilt. The protagonist questions their forgiveness, saying he remembers a time before his regression, saying that the last daughter of a clan destroyed by the Baskerville clan came to speak directly with Hugo. She had become a nun after all these years, and came to tell him that she forgave him. But, after hearing this, Hugo responded by saying that forgiveness is nothing more than the pathetic excuse of the weak, who are unable to take revenge. Far be it from me to agree with that guy. Far be it from me to agree, but only those who can't guarantee revenge offer forgiveness. And the ruler almost has a fit of happiness. He says that strength is justice, and that also means that being weak is a sin. He thinks that. The boy understands the Baskerville clan's motto well and speaks with Barrymore, then asks what the leader wants. He instructs the butler to go to the pantry and give the boy all the snacks he desires, but he can only take what he can carry, warning the protagonist not to overdo it. Vikir then asks if he can eat chocolate, thanking the clan leader before turning to leave. Then Hugo speaks with his son, saying that, with the practical exam approaching, he hopes Vikir does well. He also tells him not to lose to anyone from the main house, and the protagonist doesn't like this closeness at all, simply agreeing with the clan leader. Then, as he heads to the storeroom, the butler mentions that these are chocolates favored by the ladies of the Morgue clan, known for being